American Sunrise Early Edition. It's a new week in America and on Wall Street. Will the relative calm we saw in the stock market as last week ended continue today, or will all heck break loose again? We'll find out in 2.5 hours. Churches and synagogues who choose to be compassionate to illegal migrants, but not the people those illegals impact, are out of luck if they want to continue picking winners and losers. A federal judge has ruled they can't use their property as sanctuaries for people on the run from ICE. Police have arrested a 38-year-old man for allegedly firebombing the governor's mansion in Pennsylvania. Governor Josh Shapiro and his family were inside. They have not released an alleged motive yet on the Passover night attack. The U.S. has wrapped up nuclear talks with Iran that included face-to-face interactions with the Iranians for the first time in years. Now they say they will talk some more in the coming days. And President Trump gets a strong health endorsement from his physician as he completes his annual presidential physical. American Sunrise Early Edition starts now.
Welcome to American Sunrise Early Edition. The show where faith, freedom, and the values that built this nation take center stage.
Your good deeds and bad deeds. That's how we're going to judge you.
Join host Jake Novak as he breaks down the stories that matter.
We will be letting the public know regularly what we have found.
American Sunrise Early Edition with your host, Jake Novak, starts now.
Welcome, everybody. Happy Monday morning. Happy Passover for those of you celebrating. Happy beginning of Holy Week, or I should say, please have a meaningful Holy Week for those of you who are observing that as well. I'm Jake Novak. It is a jam-packed week with a lot of news ahead. I know a lot of people want to move on from the tariff story, but frankly, we have one of those rare moments in news where we really can see a scoreboard on how that news is affecting people every day when we take a look at Wall Street. Now, again, it's mostly Wall Street that's being affected right now. That's still a lot of people, even though we haven't seen that kind of impact on Main Street. And joining me right now is Jennifer Kelly, syndicated radio host. And Jennifer, the latest news we had overnight, which I thought was really interesting, was China telling the United States that it needs to be more sane and more reasonable. You know, that's what bullies say, Jennifer, when you finally call them out on being bullies, because it's been decades of an unfair trade balance. We have absolutely enriched the Chinese people at the expense of our own people for a long time. What we're asking for is actually sanity, a fair trade playing field. And of course, they're called, it's, you know, I guess this is, I hate that term gaslighting because it's overused, but it is gaslighting. If you're saying we're crazy because we want fairness, I don't know how China's scolding us is going to work, Jennifer. How about you?
Well, look, Jake, at least they're engaged. That is what Donald Trump says is the number one rule of the art of the deal. You have to have someone at the negotiating table before you can negotiate the deal. So I think Donald Trump is playing them for puppets, exactly what he's been planning to do all along. And in fact, I think these tariffs that were levied against these, 120 nations around the world, I think at the end of the day, this was really all about China. And so if you really think about how smart Donald Trump is, that he was willing to, upset the other, 120 nations just to get to the main culprit, which was China, who is our number one supplier of goods. That's a pretty smart day at the office if you're Donald Trump. And look, he also masterfully, I think, also allows them to save face. He said the other day when he canceled the tariffs for everybody else, but he said, look, we just have this problem with China. And I know they want to make a deal. I know they do. I know their intentions are good, but they still have to, do better. And so I think Trump is negotiating and getting them to the table in exactly the way that he intended. And look, I think it's also very smart of Donald Trump, by the way, speaking of China, to allow a little more time for the sale of TikTok and also to exempt Apple iPhones from the tariffs. So Donald Trump all around, I think, is doing this masterfully, just as he told us he would do in the book, The Art of the Deal.
Yeah, I understand that there's always political opposition in this country, and I'm not naive enough to think that the political divisions in this country end at the water's edge. But ask yourself, if you're somebody watching this, or if you're someone following this, and you're really going to bat for China, a country that is putting millions of its own people in concentration camps, a country that has absolutely no freedoms, a country that has used its victimhood mentality for 70, 80 years to wreak havoc on the rest of the world. Ask yourself, why is that the hill you want to die on with Donald Trump? Why don't you find another issue? This is the time to really show some American unity and go visit a blue-collar town that used to be thriving in this country 70 years ago and tell them how much you support China over Trump and see how well you do. Hey, speaking of divisions in this country, Jennifer, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, his house was firebombed, I guess Saturday night going into Sunday. They do have a man in custody, a 38-year-old local man. Remember, Pennsylvania's capital is Harrisburg, so this is a Harrisburg man who the police say did this, used a couple of Molotov cocktails. Look, you know that the story is going to be politicized, or maybe not, because now some of the things we've heard about this alleged firebomber, and I don't think there's much doubt this is the guy who did it. I don't think anyone's going to say someone else did it. Are murky. You know, it doesn't sound like he's a Trump supporter. Doesn't sound like he's a right winger. And already, Jennifer, I'm starting to see the story drift a little bit lower in the headlines in the mainstream media outlets. I don't see, it's not the lead in the Washington Post. It's not the lead on CNN. You know, I'm just thinking, boy, if that had been a Trump supporter, this would be wall to wall right now, wouldn't it?
It sure would. And look, you know, here's how we can tell this person is likely, not likely, from the Democrat Party. You know, this poll came out last week showing that nearly half of Democrats now say that it's okay to assassinate Donald Trump, that it would be okay to assassinate Elon Musk. And Josh Shapiro is right up there on the list, right? He's a reasonable Republican. He's probably the person that Kamala Harris should have chosen for her running mate, because we might have a President Harris right now if that had been the case. But they didn't choose him because he was Jewish. And the party has gone so far left, so far to the radical wing of the party, that they couldn't possibly choose a Jewish guy when they have the likes of Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib leading the party in essence. And so that's how far left the party has gone. But look, I suspect that this guy is a Democrat. I suspect, you know, he's done some radical searching online, and that this is probably motivated by all of that. And that is what the Democrat Party today is. They are a violent party. They're a party where half of the self-described center left say it's okay to assassinate people if you don't agree with them politically. And that is the sad state of the Democrat Party today. It's disgusting. It's disgraceful. No matter what religion you are, if you're Christian, Jewish, Muslim, this is disgusting to torch the governor's mansion on Passover when the man and his children are inside. I mean, that is just, I can't believe we're there in American politics.
Yeah, I mean, this is something that Josh Shapiro is going to find out if he didn't figure this out already. I agree with you. I mean, he was the victim, in my opinion, of the most overtly anti-Semitic political act in American history when the Democrats chose not to choose him as the VP candidate when he was so obviously on paper the best person for them to choose for winning the election. Whether he's the best politician or not is another story. He certainly, I think he was a better politician than Tim Walz as well. But forget that part. On paper, just for the Electoral College, how we elect people in this country, presidents in this country, he would have been a better choice. Everybody knows, including Josh Shapiro, that he wasn't chosen because he's Jewish. He chose to stay with his party, really. And I think that was kind of inexcusable. But anyone who commits violence against him is insane. And it seems like, yet again, he was attacked from the left, not from the right. But we'll find out. We'll find out. But because I think the news media is starting to figure out that this was a left-wing attacker or someone who's obviously kind of maybe not all that stable, but from the left, they're starting to de-emphasize the story because it's not the narrative they like. And we'll see if that continues. Jennifer, sanctuary cities and criminal behavior haven't mixed for 3,000 years. Read your Bible. A couple of guys who murdered in the Book of Kings ended up dead, even though they were hiding out in sanctuary cities because they were criminals. And now a federal judge has said that if you are a church or a synagogue or another house of worship and you're trying to hide illegal criminal migrants, that won't work anymore. Sanctuary cities, Jennifer, are for the last 3,000 years. When will people learn? But the point I want to ask you here is everyone's going to say, well, they're trying to be compassionate. They're trying to be compassionate. What about the compassion for the poor and other people who are impacted by illegal migrants? Why have the churches abandoned them? That's my really hard question.
Well, it's so interesting. All we hear from liberals is how there should be separation of church and state. And yet we see organizations like the Catholic Church, harboring illegal migrants who were brought here under one of the most political agendas of the last 50 years. And that was the Biden administration's wide open border. It's interesting if you follow the money out of places like Texas. The Fort Worth Archdiocese was really funding the Fort Worth GOP chairman, Beau French, has done some great work on this. He followed the money, and they found that the Fort Worth the Archdiocese was actually funding the entire flow of migrants across the southern U.S. border, especially through Texas. And it was to the tune of $2 billion. And so if Democrats have such problems, if a church holds a prayer in a parking lot during COVID lockdowns, or a church decides to talk about a particular candidate from the pulpit, they have such problems with that, but they don't have problems with one archdiocese in one city giving $2 billion and funding the entire flow of migrants through the southern U.S. border. It's wild. So I think the court did the right thing here. And look, they need to start looking at the people in the communities that were affected. So we know from research, right? And we know from the FBI Uniform Crime Statistic Report, the UCR, that the communities that are predominantly negatively impacted by crime from illegal migrants are minority communities, and they're young females. They are subjected to rape, sexual assault. In fact, if you look at the top 10 FBI most wanted lists in Los Angeles, I think 9 out of 10 of them are illegal immigrants on the FBI most wanted list. It's very similar in surrounding border states like Arizona, New Mexico. The statistics are quite similar. And look, even in places like Orange County, a mostly Republican county, you still have pockets of that county where illegal migrants go in and they burrow into the Hispanic communities and they commit crimes within their communities. So they are hurting, Hispanics and those, Black and brown people that Democrats always say they care about. Well, they're putting these illegal migrants and these violent criminal migrants into those communities. And those are predominantly the communities being hurt the most.
Real quick, Jennifer, only got about 20 seconds left, but we're almost at that 100-day point for the Trump administration. I know that's the theme of your radio program. Tell us a little bit about maybe what you think is like the big theme you've seen so far. Probably he's been busy. I bet you that's your theme.
That is the theme. Look, we're on day 85. Hard to believe, only 15 days left. This is phenomenal. The speed at which Donald Trump has been working, I think, is the big headline of the first 100 days. He's really accomplished in his first 100 days that most people would only accomplish in their first year, maybe even in their entire first term. I think a lot of that comes from adopting Elon Musk's phrase of extreme urgency. Elon used to say, hey, why do in 8 years what we can do in 8 months? Why do in 8 months what we can do in 8 years? Why do in 8 days what we can do in 8 hours? And you can tell a lot of that has rubbed off on Donald Trump.
I appreciate it. Jennifer Kelly, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great week and a meaningful Holy Week to you and your family. Thank
you so much. You too, Jake.
Coming up, there are polls that shock the liberals, and then there are polls that flabbergast them. I'll show you what CNN's Harry Enton is losing his mind about here in this video. And you'll probably never guess what is the hottest video game in America right now. Maybe you don't want to know, but I'm going to tell you anyway. When American Sunrise Early Edition comes back, yes, this is the game. I'll tell you what it is in a second. Let's look at the Everglades in Florida. I don't see any alligators there. Those are, as you know, those boats. I forgot what they call them. They're obviously a type of boat, and you can go. It's a big tourist thing. My parents did that once. I'm looking for airboats, and that's a fun thing to do as a tourist. From what I've been told, I will do it one day. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak. Special welcome to those of you on Getter and Rumble who are not only watching but commenting. No passive viewing of this program. I'm willing to take it. I can take your comments. Believe me, I've had worse, and a lot of you are saying some great stuff as well. Hey, look, a number of my guests and I have been saying on this program for months now that, and I've been saying it well before I started on this program, that what's really been interesting about the Trump candidacy and then his presidency and now his second presidency is that he's completely flipped the Republican script. The party has gone from the party of the richer Americans, at least the image that they had, the party of richer Americans and elites, to a true people's party. Like it or not. Well, that was actually news to CNN poll analyst Harry Enton. He should have known this already, but at least he admits it, and he's honest about it. Look at his response to a result of a poll from just a couple days ago. Check this out.
This, to me, is one of the most shocking pieces of poll data that I truthfully have seen this year, or maybe in any prior year.
Really?
Yes, really, because I want you to take a look. Cares more about the needs for people like you. You mentioned it, Kate Ball, and we got a tie, even after this tariff war had already started, split between Democrats and Republicans on how people feel. Which party cares more for needs of people like you? And why is that so surprising? Because I want you to take a look at prior years. Democrats always lead on this question. Back in 2017, before the 2018 midterms, 13-point lead. 2005, a 23-point lead for Democrats. 1994, which was a big Republican year, a 19-point lead for Democrats. And now, all of a sudden, a tie? All of a sudden, the Democrats, who are the party of the people, no more.
You know, I see Harry at football games on the weekend sometimes. I'm going to tell him in person next time I see him. It's not all of a sudden. And notice how he said, even in the middle of this tariff war, they're saying this. That's right. Now, listen, rightly or wrongly, and if you're a big economist, you want to have a debate with me about that, you can. But the tariff war is seen by regular people in America as something that is for them, something that is for people who live in middle America. Again, may not be the right policy to make that happen. I mean, you can have that argument on an economic scale. But that's exactly one of the reasons why the Republicans under Donald Trump are now tied with the Democrats on a poll question they used to always lose, which is which party cares more about people like me? And this is not all of a sudden, Harry. This has been starting ever since Donald Trump went down that escalator and people heard something that they hadn't heard from a candidate for a long time that sounded like he was talking to them. And I think he was. All right. You're not going to believe this, so just grab a hold of something so you can brace yourself. This looks like it's actually the hottest video game in America right now, based on the numbers that I saw. And folks in the control room who told me that they're playing this game constantly, I decided to do some research. The game is called Schedule 1. It's only 3 weeks old, by the way. But its players are playing the roles of, and I'm not kidding, street hustling drug dealers who try to work their way up to become drug kingpins. Kick the Can, by the way, that game is dead, for those of you who wish kids were still playing that. Now, look at this game. The graphics aren't really that good. I mean, look at this guy. I mean, it looks like this is something done at a 1982 video game. I think there were some video games in 82 better than that. But it's available on the platform Steam, and there are days and hours where there are hundreds of thousands of people playing this game at the same time. Brand new game. Independent developer. It was developed by called TGS. It puts players, again, I'll give you some more details, in the shoes of a small-time drug dealer on a journey to build an empire by selling Schedule 1 substances. Now, I'm sure a lot of you are outraged by this and pounding the table. I want to give you one potential silver lining here. I don't know if this is going to happen here, but for those of you who might remember this, when Grand Theft Auto, which is a very highly produced video game, much more sophisticated than this, when that came out, after a few years, researchers found that auto theft in this country was going down. And a number of people theorized that it had something to do with people getting their jollies out for car theft in the video game instead of in real life. The professional car thieves were still stealing cars, don't get me wrong. But whatever percentage of car theft included young people just doing it for a joyride apparently went down precipitously when that game became popular. So, hey, maybe we'll have fewer drug dealers on the streets. I doubt it, but I'm hoping. But this is a phenomenon in America, and this is the first news program of any kind, print, radio, TV, that is telling you about this incredible hot topic. And in a couple of weeks, everyone's going to be yelling about this in America, and you will have been the first to know. All right, speaking of tech and kids, the AI mania in the stock market is one thing, but we officially now have proof that people are talking about AI too much in the wrong context. Here's the latest example.
I heard, I think it was a letter or a report that I heard this morning. I wish I could remember the source, but that there's a school system that's going to start making sure that first graders or even pre-Ks have A1 teaching, every year starting, that far down in the grades. And that's just that's a wonderful thing.
All right, look, there's a lot of people who are going crazy. Obviously, she meant AI. I don't know if she had a teleprompter she was using there that spelled it out wrong. She was just following it. By the way, that happens. I write every script here on this teleprompter, and if I do a typo, sometimes I read it myself. So, hey, it can happen. But my point I want to make is, first of all, I don't think it's a wonderful thing. Tech in the schools from 0 to 12 doesn't belong that much in the schools. Screens are not necessary for educating kids from kindergarten through 6th grade. I have a lot of research to back me up on that. So A1, AI, it doesn't matter. I don't like it. Although I am in favor of A1 steak sauce in the cafeteria for kids. RFK Jr. says we should eat steak and eggs, so get the A1 sauce out. All right, coming up. Are you ready for another wild week on Wall Street? I'll try to prepare you in just a moment. And finally, an American company comes to terms with and gets honest with who its customers truly are. Honesty at Hostess. It's a bit pathetic, but the honest is just absolutely overwhelming. I love the honesty here. The Munchie Mobile is on its way when American Sunrise Early Edition comes right back. Live look at the Hudson River, looking into downtown New York. Welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. Let's take a look at where the markets will begin today. We've got some green arrows. The markets were still wild at the end of the last week, but we seem to stabilize. The real bleeding seems to have stopped. So we're looking at 400 points up on the Dow. Gold is really down just a little bit, still at that all-time high level, pretty close to it, 3,200. And crude oil also up. So we're seeing some stability. Let's take a look real quick at Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is getting right back into that range that it was in before all this tumult. I think it's at 84,000. And yes, it is. All right. Hey, the Trump administration moved late Friday to exempt smartphones, computers, and computer chips from the tariffs for now. Now, this is why you need to stay tuned to Real America's Voice. I'm telling you right now, the other stations aren't going to talk to you about this. Now, there's not a lot of us who are probably buying iPhones like Huawei and stuff like that, but Apple does make a lot of iPhones in China, so this is good news for Apple. I'm sure their shares are going to be up this morning when trading starts in about 2 hours. All right, if all you know about Israel's popularity in the world comes from the insane haters on college campuses and confute ignoramuses like Leslie Stahl on 60 Minutes, who asked a hostage, maybe it was his fault that he was a hostage. I mean, you got to see it to believe it, that video. Hey, trust me, if you believe that, you're missing the forest for the trees, because we know from people who put skin in the game that the story is very different. Here's the story. We just found out this weekend that the Tel Aviv Stock Exchange has the highest level of foreign investment in 5 years. Despite everything that's going on and all this bashing, that's because people with their own money and not mommy and daddy's tuition money to spend know that Israel is a tech and agriculture powerhouse. You don't like the politics. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But the idea is Israel is a country that produces something. Call me when Hamas makes something that you can use. All right. Objectively, the boycott, divest, and sanction movement against Israel is an utter and complete failure. More people are putting more money in Israel, not the other way around. All right. You know what I appreciate at my age? Honesty in advertising, and I'm going to give you some. Leave it to the geniuses at Hostess to finally give some honesty to us. Hostess is embracing the fact that we've all known for decades. Twinkies and the other stuff they sell is stoner food. Oh, you don't believe me? Then why else would they be rolling out a new marketing campaign complete with this new vehicle they named the Munchie Mobile? Yes, the Munchie Mobile. It's a truck, and over the next few weeks, it will hand out free snacks outside pot dispensaries in New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Maryland, and New Jersey. I mean, they're not even being subtle here. And you know when they're going to open up that truck? At 4:20 p.m. every day. And on April 20th, 4:20 in Brooklyn, New York, it's going to be open for 6 hours. I mean, really, do we have to debate this anymore? By the way, after a series of bankruptcies at Hostess, J.B. Smucker bought the company in 2023 for $5.6 billion for cash, stocks, and some patchouli sticks. All right, just kidding. Hey, it's Moving America time. Check it out. And everyone, hope you checked out that new animation. It is Moving America, sponsored by Artillery Tea. Before you fill your vehicle's tank, fill up your own human tank with some of those Artillery Teas, everybody. Hey, okay, I just want to show you now what we're up against in America when it comes to the very dishonest establishment media. That's something that we all need to take a look at. But first, of course, these are all the choices you have with Artillery Tea. I want to show you a headline right now from the Detroit Free Press, however. Check this out. This is about layoffs at an EV van factory in Canada. This is GM. It's called the Bright Drop van. It's one of those commercial vans that you see making deliveries around, and it's all electric. So the whole story is about how they're going to lay off people at this factory. It's going to be shut down, and it talks about how this is going to be a hardship for the people working there. All that's true. Even though they're Canadians, I'm not laughing at their misfortune. Here's the problem. This is what we're up against, folks, when we see the mainstream news media. There is nothing in the article about the fact that Bright Drop vans have been a complete and utter sales failure for GM. There were other stories in more honest publications a couple of weeks ago about how Bright Drop vans are jamming the lots owned by dealerships all over Canada. They can't sell them. And even in the United States, some of them are being stored here. Why would you leave that out of the story? It's not necessarily the union workers' fault that the van isn't selling. Maybe it is, but it's not necessarily. Why would you leave that out of a story? It's just incredibly dishonest. It just sounds like GM is being mean and shutting down a factory. The van isn't selling, folks. I mean, that's really the simple story. All right, speaking of GM, compensation for General Motors chair and CEO Maher spiked 6% last year to $29.5 million. That was her salary. GM says the reason why she got that raise was because the company reached several performance targets and made record profits. The company said that in its annual executive compensation report. But, they still have these layoffs, not only now, but they had some idling back then as well. Look, this is such a bad look right now. If I were a GM and I knew that the executive compensation report was coming out about that kind of a salary for my CEO, I would either delay the layoffs or delay the announcement about how much money she made. One or the other. Don't do it in the same day. That's a PR tip I'm going to give you for free. Here's another hot tip from the experts. Look, if you have a car that needs repairs, get it done now. It doesn't matter whether it's an American-made car or a Chinese-made car or whatever it is. Experts who are in the mechanic world, in the auto service world, are telling everybody the tariffs are going to raise prices on auto parts that you're going to need if your car goes into repairs, or likely to need. So get it done now. You have a couple of weeks probably before any of this will kick in. That is the advice from mechanics right now. And you know what? If you have the time to do it, go ahead and do it. That's a money-saving tip for you here on American Sunrise Early Edition. And now some sad news. The father of the Dodge Viper, his name was Roy Soberg. He has died at age 86. He was born in Erie, Pennsylvania in 1938, American legend, really. And after 25 years at GM, Soberg joined Chrysler and started working on Dodge. Remember, Chrysler owns Dodge. He was soon tasked with the unthinkable at the time. He was asked to build a performance car that could scare Ferrari and Porsche without the fluff. Originally, it didn't have a roof, didn't have airbags, didn't have traction control, just brute power and raw emotion. He did it. The Dodge Viper is a very, very popular car among gearheads and sports car lovers. Rest in peace, Roy. Tariffs have thrown the global economy into chaos, folks. Potential widespread inflation tied to massive supply chain disruptions is weighing heavily on all of us. But there is a silver lining that most people missed. President Trump specifically exempted gold and silver bullion from these sweeping tariffs. While these new policies are triggering significant financial chaos, the administration preserved your ability to diversify into precious metals. If you are concerned about your savings, I encourage you to have a free consultation with a Birch Gold precious metals specialist. The first step is to text America to 989898 and receive your free no obligation info kit on gold. Learn how to hold gold and silver in a tax-sheltered account. Birch Gold will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a gold IRA for no money out of pocket. I buy my gold from Birch Gold. Is it finally time you did too? With an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau and thousands of thankful customers, text America to the number 989898. Again, text America to 989898. That's 3 times 989898 to claim your free info kit right now. Coming up, a major ruling against Columbia University anti-Semitic agitator Mahmoud Khalil. Will this send a message to others who want to import hate into America? American Sunrise Early Edition. We'll be right back. It's Monday, April 14th. Here are some of this morning's top stories. Churches and synagogues who choose to be compassionate to illegal migrants, but not the people those illegals impact, are out of luck. If they want to continue picking winners and losers, that is. A federal judge has ruled they can't use their property as sanctuaries for people on the run from ICE anymore. Speaking of visitors to our country, Columbia University anti-Semitic agitator Mahmoud Khalil can now be deported out of America thanks to a judge's ruling. Will this send a necessary chilling effect to other terrorist groups who try to send activist operatives to U.S. campuses? Let's hope so. It's a new week in America and on Wall Street. Will the relative calm we saw in the stock market as last week ended continue today? Or will all hell break loose again? We'll find out in 2 hours. And police have arrested a 38-year-old man for allegedly firebombing the governor's mansion of Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro. They have not released his motive, or at least his alleged motive, in the Passover night attack. American Sunrise Early Edition continues now. And welcome back to American Sunrise Early Edition. I'm Jake Novak, and again, thank you to those of you watching on Getter and Rumble and commenting on Getter and Rumble. Really glad to have you here. Joining me now, someone else I'm glad to have with us, Overqualified.com CEO Isaiah Hankel, Dr. Isaiah Hankel. And Dr. Hankel, first, listen, we had a big a development over the weekend, or just before the weekend, a federal judge ruling that it is okay to deport Mahmoud Khalil, that activist from Colombia. I wouldn't even really call him a student. I'd love to see what work he did. There's a lot of evidence he was sent here by terrorists and at least state actor groups. So what's your thought on this? Will this, you think, maybe be a chilling effect? Maybe some of these other groups that are looking to send somebody like this here, maybe they won't do it now? I'm hoping.
I hope too, and I love seeing this. I think we should be wielding this power to remove people who clearly hate America and have these ties overseas or otherwise to stir up trouble here. You know, we see this happening right now as well with Chinese nationals, and there's a bill to revoke or prevent new visas from being given out to any country who does not have America's best interest in heart. And this is a very clear case, and I'm glad to see people talking about it more and more. I think it was Piers Morgan who recently said, look, if this was a white nationalist who was stirring up trouble and being racist against black people, he'd be out of the country weeks ago, right, an hour after it happened. So the fact that we have somebody in this country who the media continues to paint as someone who's just a student trying to study, just trying to help other people out. No, he was trying to cause violent protests, did cause violent protests against other Jewish students and other people at the campus, and with the sole intent of just making things incredibly difficult for students who are trying to earn their degrees. This is a bad person with bad ties. It's very obvious that he should be removed from the country immediately, and I hope that we see a lot more of this.
I mean, he has a resume that sounds like some kind of a spy. He's in Syria. He's in one other country. He's got all, I mean, this is very, very suspicious. And by the way, Piers Morgan totally stole that from me. For those of you watching this program for a while, you know, I was the one who came up with that analogy. If a white South African student came to the University of Alabama and started to work with the local KKK to protest on campus, the black students, that's right, they would be deported in 5 seconds. And I would have no problem with that, by the way. And I think most of us wouldn't have a problem with that either. And look, folks, this is not a student who just suddenly decided to become more politically involved. That's why he came here. Take a look at the universities that are having the biggest problem. What do they have in common? UCLA, Columbia, Penn, Harvard. You don't see these things happening at University of Alabama.
Yale.
You don't see these things happening at Notre Dame. You know why? Because there's no Jews. They're there to harass the Jews. It's as simple as that. If there were no Jews on that campus, he wouldn't be there. And please don't be naive and think otherwise. Speaking of campuses, Dr. Hankel, we learned just a couple of moments ago or days ago that 6 Illinois universities have killed their very explicit DEI programs. This is not like a program that has another name. This is literally like DEI programs. And because they're worried about federal funding being pulled, I know you've been watching this development for a long time, well before President Trump started to target it. What are your thoughts about this? Again, these are 6 schools in Illinois. This isn't like a Harvard or a Yale. These are schools that you may not even be on your radar.
I think it's spreading, and I think as long as we keep the pressure on, it will continue to have this positive impact. The data is very clear, even from the University of Michigan, which I know we've talked about before, which is kind of the epicenter of this. Their own study came out, of the New York Times study, who's not exactly right-leaning, said this is horrible. People actually hate each other more and are less tolerant anytime anything touches DEI. So this is good to see. I think we have to continue to infiltrate these universities and see how they're changing the name from DEI to, you know, diversity officer, community organizer officer. There's some crazy things that we're seeing, but I think as long as we can keep seeing undercover work that a lot of people are doing, and I love seeing these videos online of people being in these academic boardrooms, hearing them talk about how to hide this or really just giving up and finally admitting defeat. This doesn't work. We need the federal funding. We're going to squash it. So I think we have to put out every single ember to keep this fire from being relit, because it's such a disaster for universities and for students and for merit-based admissions.
You know, Dr. Hank, I want to float an idea by you, Because look, I'm in favor of getting more people opportunities and into universities and into jobs who may not have historically been able to do so. But my idea has long been doing it at the end of the process, at the end of the factory line, as opposed to the beginning, is the problem. There are other countries where universities and even corporations go into the lower grade schools and start offering tutoring and other programs to get the people to have the skills at the beginning of that pipeline. And it works really, really well. So, I mean, is that an answer we can give to people who say, like, well, don't you care about some of these people who are marginalized in society? And my answer is yes. It's just this isn't the way to fix it, right?
I agree. I think marginalized, right? How are we defining that? Not by race, not by gender, but by poverty, by looking at income statements, then yes, I completely agree, right? I grew up in a very similar town to JD Vance, and we had an aluminum plant that was shut down in large part because of offshoring to China. And I saw what that can do to communities. And so there's people of every race, every creed, every gender that do not have the same opportunities. And if we can identify them financially, we should absolutely have programs, because we can get a lot of people who will perform well, who will work hard and come out of that to do great things. And again, JD Vance is a great example of that.
I want to move on to another topic, Dr. Henkel. Lee Zeldin, who's the EPA director right now, is going for the puppy lobby. By the way, good. People will always be in favor of you doing nice things to puppies. He's banning the use of beagles, Snoopy, for scientific testing at the EPA. Here's my question to you, because you have a lot of experience when people do stuff like this. Is the left going to be stupid enough to push back on Lee Zeldin for trying to save the puppies? What's your prediction?
Anytime you have left and stupid in the same sentence, I'll say yes, they will absolutely do that. Look what they've done. They want to bring criminals back that we've shipped off to overseas. I believe, was it Venezuela, or what was the big group that was taken overseas? They want to bring back the criminals. Yeah, they want to bring back criminals. So if they want to do that, yeah, they'll say, let's kill the puppies. They will say whatever is the opposite stance of President Trump, of the right, of common sense. Why are we killing massive amounts of beagles, of dogs, of animals in general in today's age? You do not need to do this kind of research, especially when it's experimental gain-of-function research. And I think the fact that we're using beagles, what's next? Humans? This goes to a core point that I like to bring up over and over again. Many of these academic researchers and so-called scientists, the ones that forced us to wear 10 masks and then said you didn't need masks, but you do need masks outside, all of this different flip-flopping, they don't believe in God. They think they are God. They are fine with euthanizing beagles. They would euthanize conservatives, right, or anybody that didn't take the vaccine. That was on the table at one point, if they were allowed to, because they seriously believe they are God and that there's no problem with this. So the fact that we're actually bringing ethics back to research in a way that makes sense for the American people is a very, very good thing, but the left will absolutely fight it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll have to see whether they go for the grand slam of dumb hills to die on. Dying on the hill of supporting these foreign anti-Semites being imported onto campus to only harass the Jewish students, not to study. Dying on the hill of boys in the girls' locker room. That's the hill they want to die. Dying on the hill of trendy Iragua. Are they going to go for the grand slam and die on the hill to let us continue to kill beagles? I mean, that would really be the grand slam. All right, finally, Dr. Henkel, you've noted the proliferation of H-1B visa use all over the country. You even posted some maps over the weekend or a couple of days ago. Can you tell us how this proliferation of H-1B visa workers is really making it harder for American citizens to get work?
Yeah, so you can hire somebody on an H-1B visa for about $80,000 that you would pay very often an American citizen $120,000 to $160,000 to do, mainly for these kind of white-collar jobs. And employers, of course, are going to do this. Why? Because they can save on their margins when inflation and other things are happening in the economy, and it makes sense to them because they also have massive leverage. It's like, hey, work 18 hours a day, or we take away your visa and you go back home to your country, right? And they can't take away the visa directly, but they can fire the person on the H-1B. Makes it very hard for them to get another H-1B at another company. And there's entire organizations whose sole job is to bring in H-1B candidates, get them on an H-1B, and put them at especially big tech companies. And so what this has caused is that American-born citizens can't get the same job opportunities. In fact, you see something that is illegal, a lot of job postings saying we are only interested in H-1B visa holders for exactly that reason. It's just a money thing. And so the reason this is problematic problematic is because it's really gutting the job market. And you can talk to anyone, especially anyone that's over 40, that did everything right. They even got their own advanced degrees, masters, doctorates, and beyond. All they hear is silence and rejection. They cannot get a single interview. There's a lot of ghost jobs, ghost interviews. This is a big trend now. They put out the jobs to act like they're trying to make it a fair playing field, to hire American citizens first, of course, because that's the law. It's supposed to be you only hire somebody on an H-1B if you can't get an American citizen to do the same job. They pretend like they're looking, but they already have somebody on an H-1B in their back pocket. And there's been some huge lawsuits recently. A lot of these companies that are just H-1B mills, right? Their whole purpose is to bring in people, get as many people on H-1Bs as possible, and get them into these, tech companies and otherwise. But not just tech. I shouldn't single out tech because it's also working on farms and manufacturing, mom and pop stores. Their job is to get in as many H-1Bs as possible. And that's why the cap, I think it's around 80,000 H-1Bs per year. It's supposed to be from a lottery, is always exceeded. Last numbers that I saw were well over 100,000, I think even over 200,000, and they also obscure the tracking. So there's a lot of people out there that are putting maps and showing where these H-1B holders are congregated, what's happening in terms of the lawsuits for these different companies that act as H-1B mills. And I hope we see more of this because Americans have the right to have the opportunity to get hired first. And that's not what we're seeing right now.
Yeah, and cracking down on this will, of course, be portrayed in the establishment media as some kind of insane policy, racist, or anything else like that. But of course, if you try to stand up for American citizens who are all races and creeds, it's not just white people who are going to be benefited. If they're American citizens, they will be benefited from more monitoring of how this is being used. Probably a lot of good reasons to use H-1B visas in certain circumstances. But as you point out, that proliferation, the fact that it's really growing beyond justifiable need is really important. Dr. Isaiah Hankel, thanks for joining us. Have a great week.
Thanks, Jake.
All right. Terrence Bates will join me next to talk about that latest, and what the latest is, and that arson attack on the Pennsylvania governor's mansion. T. Bates, he's coming in just a moment. That's a live shot of Niagara Falls, and it's not just beautiful to look at. And by the way, go visit, it's fun. But this is actually a major news story in America that no one's telling you other than your good old buddy here, Jake Novak, on American Sunrise Early Edition. Niagara Falls is, of course, a major producer of electric power. And so Buffalo, New York, which is right near Niagara Falls, has the cheapest electric power in America. Because look at that natural resource they've got right there generating the power. And because of that cheap electric power, Buffalo in the last few years has become a boom town for Bitcoin miners. That takes a lot of energy. A boom town for AI companies, not A1, AI companies who are coming to Buffalo. The amount of money that Buffalo is worth every day is growing. I have someone in my high school class who has been buying every building in Buffalo for like 4 years right now. Now you know why. So there you go. Now you know something that the rest of the news media won't tell you. Welcome back. Hey, T. Bates joins us today. This is a special guest appearance by T, who has joined us in the past, but it's been too long. And Terrence, hey, I want to talk about what I thought. Now, yesterday we learned, I guess it was early in the morning, that Josh Shapiro, he is the governor of Pennsylvania, the governor's mansion. It's the people's house, what you call it, the governor's mansion. Mm-hmm. He and his family were inside, I guess, early Sunday morning, late Saturday night. Police say a guy broke in there, threw Molotov cocktails, some real damage to the house, by the way. And again, this guy has young kids, a terrible story, obviously. But
absolutely. So I thought I was coming on, Jake, to talk about. I thought I was coming on to talk about chicken wings in Buffalo, since you were talking about Buffalo, New York. But this is more interesting. Go ahead, finish up. I'm sorry, I was a little disappointed, but this is a more interesting story.
So we know a little bit about the suspect. Police say they've got, they kind of caught him red-handed. They say Cody Balmer, he's 38 years old. He's from Harrisburg. For those of you who don't know your state capitals, the capital of Pennsylvania is Harrisburg, not Philly or Pittsburgh. Hey, Terrence, I thought this was going to be absolutely the major top story over every platform, right wing, left wing, in middle of the road this morning. And it's not. Are you surprised that it's not? Because I'm not when we talk a little bit more. But are you surprised? Because I thought this was going to be.
I must say I am surprised. I am surprised, just because it's, for lack of a better word, and I'm using an industry term, it's a sexy story. A guy is accused of climbing over a 7-foot fence, sneaking around security, and getting into the governor's mansion, not just anybody's house, the governor's mansion that has security, and then setting fire to said mansion and then getting away scot-free before being caught later on in the day. Those facts in and of themselves, I think, lend themselves to it being the top story pretty much around the country. And then when you add to that a guy who was considered and on the short list to be a vice presidential candidate comes out and says this sorts of violence has to stop. This is unbelievable. The kind of atmosphere in this country is way too incendiary, no pun intended. I think those are the sorts of things that set this kind of story up to be a top story and to be talked about. And the fact that it's not speaks to where our news media is in general. But I will tell you this, we're going to be talking about it here on Real America's Voice.
Yeah, I know. I know that's going to be a big topic for you for American Sunrise, the big show coming up in the next 2 hours. And look, Don't yell at me and say, oh, they're all covering it, Jake. You're not telling the truth. It's just not with the urgency. I logged on this morning and checked out all the mainstream media outlets, and it wasn't the top story on any of them. They had it in the middle. They had it, they are reporting on it. And I'm sorry to say, I think the reason is simply, again, nothing's super confirmed yet. But from what we know of the suspect in this case, he was not a Trump supporter. And because it's not about Trump and they can't blame it on him, they'll try, believe me. They're going to de-emphasize the story. I wish I weren't that cynical, Terrence, but I think I'm right about this, and I'll say I'm wrong if I'm wrong, but I think I'm right.
And Jake, if I can just really quickly add, the fact that it happened during Passover and Shapiro is Jewish, that adds another angle. Now, again, we don't know if that was part of what motivated it, but it's an angle that needs to be explored.
Yeah, we'll get more honesty on your show coming up in the next 2 hours. This has been Early Edition, American Sunrise. The big show starts now. Thanks for joining me.
American Sunrise is a great way to start your morning. Join us Monday through Friday from 8 to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. We've got the news of the day and some compelling interviews that you don't want to miss. Here's what you missed from yesterday.
The energy is high after yesterday's tremendous swing up. That was just wild.
It appears that what's happening right now was intentional. President Trump basically reversing the tariffs yesterday and saying, okay, I'm going to put a 90-day pause on most of the significant tariffs and we'll still keep the 10% in.
This is the art of the deal. I mean, it really is. I mean, he got all of these countries to say, Mr. President, we want to renegotiate. Okay, so we'll pause it. renegotiate, the landscape becomes fairer. And oh, by the way, they basically take China and put them in a separate, as we've talked about, a separate sphere and make them the boogeyman.
Every country in the world who wants to come and negotiate, we are willing to hear you. We're going to go down to a 10% baseline tariff for them, and China will be raised to 125.
What's happening with China is necessary and needed, along with some of the other world's worst offenders, India, Vietnam, and parts of the European Union. So I foresee that the world is going to start coming to the table, and we've seen a lot of folks already start talking.
We just watched as the Dow closed yesterday at 3,000. I think that's the highest it's been in 18 years, give or take. I mean, really, we have been playing a game of chicken for decades with one arm tied behind our back. Our American manufacturers have been at a competitive disadvantage for decades. And while everyone is for free trade, it needs to be fair.
If we would go back 2 weeks when all this tariff talk was underway and we didn't know what was going to happen, and right before Liberation Day, it was doom and gloom. The bottom was going to drop out. This is horrible for the economy. People were criticizing. I don't see how people can sit on the sidelines and say it's fair for us to pay 67% tariff, and it's fair for other countries to pay 15%. We finally shifted, and I love what President Trump said in that press conference yesterday. This is what should have happened 40, 50 years ago, and it didn't.
The only way that China prevails in this contest is if it gets Trump to back down. Now, Trump knows he holds all the high cards, but the idea is the Chinese are trying to influence elements in the American political system to force Trump to back down. I just don't see it, because our president is not going to be intimidated by Xi Jinping anymore.
Ahead on American Sunrise, Trump, tariffs, and the world markets. After a rock and roll week on Wall Street, we're monitoring the markets on what should be a busy Monday. The details ahead. Plus, the Trump administration says talks with Iran over the weekend were constructive, and more talks will be held this week. Could we see a nuclear deal soon? And finally, Bill Maher takes us inside the Oval Office with details about his meeting with the president. How did it go? We'll have the inside scoop, those stories, and so much more as American Sunrise begins right now.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrence.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Good morning. I'm Allison Hans in for Dr. Gina live from West Palm Beach. Let's bring in David Brody in Washington, D.C. and Terrence Bates in our Denver newsroom. Good morning, guys.
Good morning,
Lady
Allison.
and gentlemen, good morning. Hey, guys, if I can just take the reins really quickly. This is one of the few mornings I wish I was a newspaper editor-in-chief and I was writing headlines, because the big headline of the day would be Keystone Cops in the Keystone State. And I say all of that because of what happened at the governor's mansion there. Get this, and I know you guys have probably both been watching the story as well. A guy climbs the gate. It's a 7-foot fence. He climbs the fence of the governor's mansion, gets onto the property, somehow eludes police, gets into the governor's house, and sets fire before taking off. This is kind of what's left of the mansion, some pretty significant damage done. But I just wonder, in this day and age, David and Allison, how does that happen? How does someone climb the gate to the governor's mansion, get into the governor's mansion, set fire, and then get away? He ultimately was caught, but still, how does that happen? How is that sort of security lapse a thing in this day and age, David?
Well, a lot of unanswered questions. You're right. It's more than just a security breach. I mean, this is a security breach in 84 font and bold, T. Bates, for sure. And let's go to the other facet of the story, and let's not bury this lead. It happened on Passover. Josh Shapiro, Jewish. We now know from the affidavit that just came out here in the last few hours, according to the affidavit, the suspect here said he had hate against Josh Shapiro, and said that if he had seen Josh Shapiro in the governor's mansion, if he had gotten that far, he would have, quote, beaten him with a hammer. So you put all of that together, hammer, hate, Passover, Josh Shapiro, Jewish. Let's see where this goes, and let's see more about this suspect, Allison. But this feels like a hate crime. We will see. That's allegedly. We will see the asterisk, but it's disturbing to say the least, Allison.
Certainly begs the question if it's a hate crime. And my question, as T. Bates was saying, where is it in the mainstream media? Where are we seeing? Why aren't we seeing this story this morning? I would like to ask you guys your thoughts.
Well,
so
we're
there is reporting on it.
It's just not above the fold. It's just not above the fold.
Right. All right. Agree, David. That's, there's reporting on it. And it's a story. I would think that it would be above the fold, that we'd see a lot more reporting on it. But the information is out there. And as I said, and this is just a term that we use in the industry, it's not always the most appropriate, but it is a sexy story, given all of the angles and all of what transpired in the story, allegedly. It's a sexy story. It's definitely a sexy story, David.
Yeah.
Well, they certainly have to up the security at the governor's mansion. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Time for some Bible.
Well, can you give us our Bible verse, please? I think
yes, let's do that.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Dad. I think we were thinking the same thing. I think it's definitely appropriate, particularly after what transpired, that we get a word from God.
Absolutely. Well, let's check out today's Bible verse from 1 Corinthians, book 15, verses 20-23. But now Christ is risen from the dead and has become the first fruits of those who have fallen asleep. For since by man came death, by man also came the resurrection of the dead. For as in Adam all die, even so in Christ all shall be made alive. But each one in his own order. Christ the firstfruits, afterward those who are Christ at his coming. Well, also this morning, President Trump's results from his physical are in, and the president remains in excellent health. Officials say Trump weighs 224 pounds and has robust cardiac, pulmonary, and neurological health. Blood pressure was normal, and so was his heart rate. The doctor who did the physical said Trump's active lifestyle is a key factor to his health. And here is what Trump had to say about his physical results on Air Force One, coming back from Florida late last night. Take a look.
And I understand it was a very good report. It was perfect. And I jumped in cockpit in the exam, and I would challenge anybody here to meet those marks because I have a perfect one. Are you impressed by that? Are you impressed? I can take that. Your methods, guys, that's a good. Fine. That's a good. I will respect for you anymore.
For more, let's bring in Missouri Congressman Bob Onder. Good morning, Congressman. How are you this morning?
I'm doing great. Great to be back.
Oh, thank you for coming in. Okay, clean bill of health. And for someone who doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, this sounds pretty good.
It sounds really good. You know, in medicine, when we're assessing a patient's health, functional status is everything. And here is a 78-year-old man who can work 20-hour days, give hour-long speeches without notes, and is an accomplished golfer. It's just not surprising at all that he passed his physical. He passes, you know, most Americans with flying colors. Most importantly, of course, his cognitive function was perfect. He scored a perfect score. And, you know, we can see, just as a layperson, we can see someone who's in great health, great cognitive shape versus someone who is declining. I think most of us watched Joe Biden as he was hiding in his basement back in 2020 and said, this is an elderly man on the decline. President Trump's doing great.
Congressman, President Trump has called for that one big, beautiful bill. You and your colleagues are now in the process of putting it all together, both the House and the Senate. Let's just be honest, though. Even though his blood pressure is good right now, if you guys fail on this, his blood pressure is going to go through the roof, as will the blood pressure of the American people. So talk to me, if you will, about where the negotiations stand between the House and Senate, and what are some of the non-starters for you when it comes to this one big, beautiful funding bill?
Yes, of course. I think all of our blood pressures would go up if the American people face a $4.5 trillion tax increase. We'd all, on average, face a 20% tax increase. Small businesses would as well. The death tax would go up and so on. And in addition, the big, beautiful bill will fund border security, which is vitally important, as well as reform energy policy so that we can drill for domestic energy again and not beg foreign dictators for oil. So the latest development is that on Thursday, the House passed the Senate version of the budget resolution. Now, to me, the most concerning thing right now is that the Senate did not commit to as much in spending cuts. The House committed to at least $1.5 to $2 trillion in spending cuts over the next decade. The Senate more or less passed just a placeholder, a very tiny amount of tax cuts. So that tells me there's more work to be done. But what would be a non-starter? I think any increase in taxes would be a non-starter. I think the exact details are in progress, but basically renewing the 2017 Trump Tax Cut and Jobs Act that produced so much prosperity with low inflation, I think that's what we really need to concentrate on.
No, there's no doubt about that. I mean, that seems like a non-negotiable. I mean, that has to get done, obviously, especially with the tariffs that we've seen recently. Congressman, we could talk a lot about policy, but I want to play a clip from liberal Bill Maher. Of course, he announced that he met with President Trump at the White House. This is fascinating. Here's what he had to say. Take a look.
And he said, you know, I've heard from a lot of people who really like that we're having this dinner. Not all, but a lot. And I said, same. A lot of people told me they loved it, but not all. And we agreed. The people who don't even want us to talk, we don't like you. Don't talk, as opposed to what? Writing the same editorial for the millionth time and making 25-hour speeches into the wind? Really? That's what liberals have? He takes the piss out of everybody else and we can hold ours? Okay, that's my report. You can hate me for it, but I'm not a liar. Trump was gracious and measured, and why he isn't that in other settings, I don't know, and I can't answer, and it's not my place to answer. I'm just telling you what I saw, and I wasn't high.
That's great stuff, you know, but there is kind of a point to that, right? I mean, and ultimately, I've seen him behind the scenes Excuse me, I know you have too. He's very gracious. But beyond all of that, you would think Democrats, they've gone for the Trump derangement syndrome angle. Trump is horrible. Trump is a king. Trump's the worst thing since sliced bread. And yet, if they would just meet him somewhere to negotiate, he wants to strike deals. That's what he's all about. He'll talk and sit down with liberals. They just won't get there. Congressman, they just won't do it.
Well, I think that's right. And I think if you look at all of the failures of the Biden administration, you see the influence of Trump derangement syndrome. All of the things that President Trump was doing right, if Joe Biden had just continued one or two or three of those policies, we'd be in better shape. We'd have lower inflation. We would have energy independence. We would have respect on the world stage. But no, this hatred of Trump, and I think we see this way too much on the left. That much of what the left is about is motivated by hatred of their enemy, as opposed to trying to do the good for the country.
Oh, so well put. Thank you so much, Congressman Onder. Thank you so much for coming in this morning. We certainly appreciate you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Sir.
Coming up, we check out the hottest headlines from the RAV Newsroom with T. Bates. And later, a Pennsylvania man has been charged with making threats against President Trump and other government officials. So where do things stand? We take a look as American Sunrise continues.
This news break is brought to you by AMAC, Association of Mature American Citizens.
Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, just beautiful down there. Oh, that beach. You've been there. You know how amazing it is. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise on a Monday morning here across America in April. A week to go, a little less than a week to go before Resurrection Sunday. I'm David Brody, by the way. Coming up, what in the world's going on? We've got another arrest, and I say another because it's another person making a threat to assassinate and assault President Trump. And guess what? He's from Butler, Pennsylvania. What in the world is in the water in Butler, PA? We're going to talk about it in a moment. First, T. Bates standing by with the latest headlines from the Real America's Voice newsroom, sponsored by AMAC.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
The Trump administration is set to launch a national security trade investigation into imported semiconductors and microchips. The move would mostly affect technology from East Asia like China and Taiwan. It also sets the stage for future tariffs on smartphones, computers, and other electronic imports, though. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says new tariffs separate from President Trump's reciprocal tariffs will eventually be levied on those products and more.
Semiconductors and pharmaceuticals will have a tariff model in order to encourage them to reshore, to be built in America. We need our medicines and we need semiconductors and our electronics to be built in America. We can't be beholden and rely upon foreign countries for fundamental things that we need. We can't be relying on China for fundamental things that we need. Our medicines and our semiconductors need to be built in America. Donald Trump is on it. He's calling that out.
Secretary Lutnick says details on the new tariffs are expected to be rolled out this week, with actual tariffs being implemented in the next couple of months. The Trump administration is in a bit of a face-off with the Supreme Court after the High Court ordered the administration to bring a wrongfully deported Salvadoran back to the United States. While the administration acknowledges that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was living in Maryland legally under a work permit, court filings on Sunday argue the administration isn't obligated to help him get out of prison in El Salvador and return to the United States. While the SCOTUS order says the U.S. should, quote, facilitate Garcia's return, attorneys for the government say that only means they should remove any domestic obstacles that would otherwise impede his ability to return to the U.S. That doesn't include helping get him out of El Salvador. Immigration officials also say the order barring Garcia's deportation is no longer valid, quote, because of his membership in MS-13, which is now a designated foreign terrorist organization. Well, the man accused of torching Pennsylvania's governor mansion remains in custody this morning and could answer to attempted murder, terrorism, aggravated arson, and aggravated assault charges as soon as today. The fire torched Democrat Governor Josh Shapiro, his family, and another family forced them to evacuate the burning home on Saturday after they had been celebrating the Jewish holiday of Passover at the time.
This type of violence is not okay. This kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society. And I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other, directed at one particular party or another, or one particular person or another. It is not okay. And it has to stop.
Investigators say the suspect scaled a fence and eluded police in order to break into the governor's mansion and set that fire. So far, investigators aren't saying what motivated the attack. However, the mansion sustained significant damage, as you can see in these pictures. That's a quick check of your headlines. We'll have more headlines coming your way here in just a little bit, including old video of Hillary Clinton has just resurfaced during which she talks about being tough on the border. You'll have to listen to what she has to say and see if it sounds familiar. That's ahead. Next, though, President Trump has allowed the military to take control of public land along the southern border. So how much will this help in securing the nation's borders? We'll assess. Right now, a quick look at this day in history. It was on this date in 1863 that President Abraham Lincoln was shot by actor and Confederate sympathizer John Wilkes Booth. The infamous attack happened at the Ford's Theater. President Lincoln died the following morning. It was part of a larger, unsuccessful plot to kill Vice President Andrew Johnson and Secretary of State William Seward as well. More American Sunrise coming your way in 2 minutes.
The Everglades, alligator alert, watch out for the alligators. I drive on I-75 in Florida. It says Alligator Alley. I'm looking for alligators. I don't see them. But then again, I'm in my car. So maybe I should get out and wrestle a few of them. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. All right, so here's a wild story. A man from Butler, PA, that's right, I said Butler, PA, has been federally charged with making threats to assassinate and assault President Trump and other government officials. This is not a replay of July, FYI. Officials say they have arrested 32-year-old Sean Maher last week for making threats against Trump, ICE agents, and other officials. Attorney General Pam Bondi praised the investigation done by the FBI and local police. Maher reportedly made the threats between January 15th and April 5th and said he is going to carry out a mass shooting eventually, but they got him. For more, let's bring in the former sheriff of Pinal County, Arizona, Mark Lamb. Mark, great to have you back on the show. I mean, your reaction to this and what in the world is in the water in Butler, PA, but I guess that's a separate issue. But good morning to you, Sheriff.
Look, David, I don't know what's in the water in Butler, PA, but I can tell you this was a good arrest. I remember 10, 20 years ago when we grew up, you never said anything violent about the president because you'd be afraid that the FBI would crash through your windows and arrest you. You know, we've gotten over the last 10 years where with social media, these people have gotten increasingly more violent towards our elected officials. And it has become alarming. You know, it used to be you could just, throw it off to the side. But with what happened to the president in that same Butler, PA, where he was shot and by the grace of God saved from that bullet, this could be a very different situation. So I think they need to take these threats serious. They did in this case. And I, too, like Pam Bondi, congratulate them for good work.
I'd like to point your attention to a CBS headline that basically says that President Trump has authorized the military to take control of public land along the southern border. Since you live along the southern border and you have patrolled it, seen it for yourself, what exactly does this mean and what would the benefit of this be?
Well, first of all, when I saw it was a CBS headline, I had to go verify it somewhere else because you can't CBS.
Fair enough.
But I did go verify it. And look, I love the idea. We need to protect our country. I just said, on a different interview, I said, it's funny because Americans are all about sending troops to the Ukrainian border to protect their border. But heaven forbid we send troops to our own border to protect our country from an invasion. What we saw over the last 4 years was an invasion. It meets the definition of an invasion. Military-age men by the millions coming into this country. And now you have the cartel going out and saying, look, we are authorizing violence against local law enforcement, border patrol with the use of weaponized drones and other things. Who can compete with that? The military can. And the military can compete with the weaponry that the cartels have. I think it is absolutely okay that we protect our borders. I'm 100% for this and glad to see it.
So, Sheriff, what is that going to look like with the military on the border?
You know, Allison, that's a good question, because a lot of people think, well, the military can't go help enforce the law. That comes from the 1878 Posse Comitatus Act, or law, which basically said they couldn't get involved with the law. I agree with that. I don't want the military out enforcing the law as a sheriff. But I don't think they're enforcing the law here. They're protecting our border. That's a different thing. These people that are coming in this country are not citizens. They're not affecting a law against a fellow citizen. They're protecting our country from people coming in. What does it look like? They're not going to be standing there most likely with guns down there. They're going to be assisting Border Patrol with the mission. They're going to be providing more troops on the ground and bolstering up that border, making it a lot more difficult for people to come into this country. The idea is we get that number from 7,000, which is a great number right now with the work of President Trump and this administration, but we should be getting it down to zero. Zero true human trafficking, zero drugs being trafficked into this country.
Let me ask you this, Sheriff. There's some older video. It's now resurfacing, of Hillary Clinton talking tough, LOL, on the border. Have a look.
So I think we got to have tough conditions. Tell people to come out of the shadows. If they've committed a crime, deport them. No questions asked. They're gone. If they've been working and are law-abiding, we should say, here are the conditions for you staying. You have to pay a stiff fine because you came here illegally. You have to pay back taxes, and you have to try to learn English, and you have to wait in line.
You know, Sheriff, I'm from New York. I think we call these people a piece of work back there. These people, I mean, she's talking tough, but they don't mean any of it. And then it's the same thing with tariffs, right? I mean, we cue up the clips of Nancy Pelosi and all these other folks talking about China. Get them, tariffs. Oh, no, never mind. We don't really believe that.
You're challenging my sensibilities this morning by making me agree with Hillary Clinton. I never thought I would ever agree with Hillary Clinton on something. But I agree with her on this. And it's not just Hillary Clinton. It's a whole list of other elected officials from 10, 20 years ago who felt exactly the way that President Trump and the American people do in protecting our country, whether it relates to people that came into this country illegally or, like you said, the tariffs, or even more, the DOGE. How many videos have we seen of Democrats talking about wanting to cut down the spending in government? Bill Clinton, Hillary Clinton's husband, he cut, 400,000 jobs during his tenure. So the hypocrisy just continues. But the left thinks there's no video of any of this. And even when you show them the video, they're like, well, I never said that. They just do not want to agree with President Trump. That's how much they hate him. But it's hard to, right now, everything that he's doing is what they said 10 years ago.
Well, Sheriff Lamb, no, go ahead. Go ahead, Terrence.
I'm sorry, Sheriff Lamb. I've got to ask you this question. We're always going to call you Sheriff Lamb, even though you did step down and you're technically not the sheriff of Pinal County, Arizona anymore, but you're always the sheriff in my heart. So I'm curious if you view the border crisis differently now as a civilian as opposed to being intimately involved in it as the sheriff there in Pinal County. And part B of that question, what's your political future looking like now? I know you're probably enjoying the time off and not having to answer anybody, but I get the sense that something else is up your sleeve.
Well, I do enjoy the time off, Terrence. I love sitting around here, being at my house. I'm still working a ton. I'm very active in the border. I'm working as a law enforcement advisor for FAIR, the Federation for American Immigration Reform out of Washington, D.C. That's fairus.org. Go check them out. They're very active. We're working on trying to make sure that we get sheriffs. It's a good time to get them on as 287G, which means they work with our ICE and our federal government in making sure that the people who commit crimes in this country are removed. So I'm staying very active in the border. It's a little bit different because I can't go out and ride around in my own truck and affect traffic stops and pull people over for driving too slow in the left lane. But I can still be very active in the border, and I am staying active. And I'm also working with a few other companies in law enforcement. As far as politics in my future, that's a rich man's profession. I got to make a little bit more money before I can entertain getting back into politics.
Fair enough answer. I one last question. As someone who's been on the border crisis for the past couple of decades, I would just love to know what you think. When you look back and see what's happened over the past 60 days, your thoughts?
I love it. You know, and it's what I said. All we had to do was go back to the Trump era policies. We saw a lot of success with the Trump era policies. Now we're seeing it again. And I think the numbers continue to get better and better. The reality is it's as simple as just saying what you mean and doing what you say. Your actions lining up with what you say, removing people that came into this country illegally, not letting them come across the border, not letting false asylum claims, getting these safe third country acts, agreements in place with other countries. All of these are the things that needed to be done. I love seeing it. President Trump is doing exactly what he told the American people that he would do, and exactly what the American people voted him in to do. And so I love seeing it. I kind of still wish I was in the game some days just to be part of it, but I am trying to stay as active as I can.
Sheriff Mark Lamb, thanks for getting up early with us. I know you're out there in Arizona. We appreciate it. Go take a Biden. In other words, go take a nap.
You are challenging me today. I can never take a Biden. I don't know. I can never do that.
No, don't try that at home. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Sheriff.
Take care.
Great stuff. He's like out of Central Casting. I love it. Coming up, waiting for the opening bell. The stock markets have taken us all for that rocky ride. How will they do this week? We're going to take a look as American Sunrise continues.
A spectacular picture this morning. Statue of Liberty, the selfie shot. Great way to start the Monday. Great way to start the week. Hope you have a good one. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Allison Hans, in for Dr. Gina. Time now for today's health news, sponsored by the Wellness Company. Under the microscope today, some great tips for longevity in life. You don't need to join a fancy gym to get back in shape or get healthier. Experts say we need roughly 150 minutes a week of moderate exercise, like walking, or 75 minutes of vigorous exercise, like running or swimming. The American Heart Association also says doing weight training at home with dumbbells is another great way to get that exercise in. Another tip given was to eat healthier, of course, and avoid processed and fried foods. Experts say we are better off with diets more based on fruits, veggies, and lean proteins, which can boost longevity. And finally, we all need to get more sleep. Experts say we need to shoot for 7 hours of uninterrupted sleep to prolong our lives. People also need to have set times of doing things like going to bed and waking up, even on the weekends and holidays. Well, it is a new day in America and a new administration in Washington, D.C. There's a lot of excitement and optimism about the future, but the reality is there's a lot of work to do, especially when it comes to fixing our broken healthcare system. The truth is that the forces that are responsible for breaking our healthcare system aren't going to simply go away. The challenges our system faces won't disappear overnight. Now, more than ever, you need to be prepared. And that's where the Wellness Company comes in. Their doctors are medical professionals that you can trust, and their line of prescription medical kits are the gold standard when it comes to keeping you safe and healthy. Whether it's the medical emergency kit, the contagion kit, the first aid kit, or the travel kit, these prescription kits contain an assortment of life-saving medications and guidebooks to assist in the proper use of these medications. From the flu, the strep throat, from COVID to the bird flu, from a trip to the beach to a trip overseas, the Wellness Company has a prescription kit designed to keep you and your family safe. Make America healthy again starts at home. Do your part and protect the health of you and your family. Go to twc.health/RAV today and order. That's twc.health/RAV and use the promo code RAV to save 10%. Let's toss it over to David.
Thanks, Allison. Appreciate it. All right, the stock market's capped off a roller coaster week with one of their best weeks of trading in more than a year for the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ. I know that sounds weird because we were talking about all the doom and gloom, but CBS News points out that actually the S&P 500 gained nearly 2% on Friday. That's 95 points. The Dow gained more than 1.5%. The NASDAQ gained more than 2%. We're all talking about on Friday. Of course, they had that big jump earlier in the week, too, and then, of course, a lot of bad days. This comes after the U.S. and China have both been imposing new tariffs on each other, which we know all about. So what can people expect this week? Well, here we go again. For more, let's bring in research fellow and public finance economist for the Heritage Foundation, E.J. Antoni. E.J., thanks for being here. So take us through this to calm our nerves, or maybe not. What can we expect? What sort of markers are you looking for this week? Good morning to you.
Well, good morning. I would say what we're really looking for and what we're really hoping for at this point is just consistency. It really is unfortunate that when we look at the different people within the Trump administration, we keep getting different messaging. And in fact, sometimes the same person will contradict themselves, sometimes even in the same interview. So that's very, very unfortunate. And I think as Trump and Scott Bessent, our Treasury Secretary, seem to get more and more control of the situation, and as it becomes clear that they are the chief negotiators, I think that is actually ultimately what is calming down markets, because those are two people in whom markets have a great deal of trust. The president, obviously, for his leadership skills, and our Treasury Secretary, obviously, for his total mastery of debt markets. And so, again, as we see more of a shift, I think, to those two individuals being in charge, that seems to be what is a calming balm on these markets.
Well, EJ, former Dallas Mavericks owner Mark Cuban says people need to stock up on everyday goods before tariffs raise prices. Now, Cuban posted this on Blue Sky, saying it's not a bad idea to go to the local Walmart or big box retailer and buy lots of consumables now. From toothpaste to soap, anything you can find storage space for. Buy before they have to replenish inventory. Even if it's made in the USA, they'll jack up the price and blame it on tariffs. Well, do you think that this is good advice?
These are the same people who were saying businesses were being greedy for the last 4 years by hiking their prices under President Biden and then blaming it on COVID. I mean, it's absolutely amazing. How is it that businesses just magically become greedy with these turn of events? It makes absolutely no sense. And actually, with that in mind, if we look at the prices paid by businesses, they actually have risen faster over the last 4 years than the prices paid by consumers. So this idea that businesses will pass all cost increases along, and then also that businesses, I guess, make up some cost increases and pass those along as well to blame them on things like COVID or on things like tariffs. I'm sorry, but the data just aren't there to support that. I think people need to continue living their lives as normal.
EJ, before we head out, just a quick question here about the bond market. Less than a minute left, and I know we can go all day on the bond market, but I'm just an anchor with makeup. I don't really understand much of this. So explain the bond market specifically as to why that's important here, because I'm trying to understand it all.
Well, the part of the bond market that is most important would be for U.S. Treasuries. Now, Treasuries come in bonds, but you can also get them in bills and notes. And the main difference there is how quickly those different securities mature. In other words, you lend money to the government and then they agree to pay it back after a specified period of time. And if we see the yields on bonds get too high, that's very, very problematic for the Treasury because they have $36 trillion of debt that they need to refinance. So it's like a family with a lot of credit card debt needing to refinance it at lower interest rates. If all of a sudden you can't get lower interest rates, if the introductory APR on those credit cards expire and the interest rate goes to 30%, you're in a lot of trouble. And so the Treasury similarly needs lower yields on its bonds so it can continue to borrow new debt at low rates and so that it can also refinance old debt at new low rates.
Thank you, EJ and Tony, for coming in this morning. We appreciate you.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up, Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency is uncovering hundreds of millions of dollars in unemployment fraud. Can you guess which woke states made up the majority of the scams they found? We'll give you a hint. If you think California is one of them, you may be right. Find out the other two after the break.
Welcome back. I'm American Sunrise correspondent Emily Finn. It is time now to stay awake, not woke, brought to us by the 1775 Coffee Company. If you care about what goes into your body like you care about what's happening to this country, this is for you. 1775 just dropped their new Rejuvenate blend, the first coffee of its kind, crafted to help you feel stronger, stay sharper, and support healthy aging with every cup. It's a bold, dark roast infused with CAAKG, a clinically studied ingredient shown to support longevity and help reduce biological age. And right now, you can grab their longevity bundle, everything you need to upgrade your morning routine, for just $99. But they only made 1,000 of them, and once they're gone for good. It includes 2 bags of their Rejuvenate anti-aging coffee, a rare pea berry roast, one of the most elite beans on earth, less than 5% of coffee crops worldwide, and exclusive 1775 merch that you won't find in stores. It's designed for people who still believe in America first. This is a small batch, single, original, roasted every week in Miami. Not corporate lab junk. Nope, watered down blends, just real coffee with powerful, proven ingredients. Head to 1775coffee.com/Rav and grab your longevity bundle while you still can. This is coffee that wakes you up, it fuels your body, and reminds you what freedom tastes like. All right, well, now that we are caffeinated, it's time to stay awake, not woke. California, New York, and Massachusetts. Do those 3 states have something in common? Well, Elon Musk believes so, after the Department of Government Efficiency says that trifecta of woke is responsible for more than $300 million in unemployment fraud. From a recent announcement, in total, DOJ says they have found $382 million in fraudulent unemployment payments since 2020. And California, New York, and Massachusetts are responsible for $305 million of that in improper claims. That's close to 80% of the total fraud that they found. All 3 states' governments are completely controlled by Democrats, as we know, from their state house, Senate, and governor's offices. And their attorney generals and secretary of states are Democrats as well, only further proving which party is responsible for the fraud. Let's bring in Allison, David, and Terrence for more here. I mean, this is just another example of how overdue this audit of our federal spending is from DOJ. You know, Allison, I want to start with you here. That's a lot of money to waste.
That's a lot of money to waste. And some of the people who are receiving these funds are actually illegal immigrants who are on the terror watch list. Okay, let that sink in. People who are getting unemployment, illegal aliens on the terror watch list. That is absolutely absurd. So to say that this audit was well due, oh, you betcha.
And I think the bigger picture, David.
Go ahead, Terrence.
I'm sorry.
Yes,
I just want to say, and I'll be very quick or very brief. I think the bigger picture shows that there's a flaw in the system, that the system itself is broken, that so many people who should not be getting these benefits are literally taking advantage of the government. There needs to be some institutional change that happens and really kind of an overhaul of the system so this kind of thing doesn't happen in the future. David, go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely think that's a part of it. But look, you know, we have the breaking news, you know, that comes on, right? Breaking news. Well, we should have something comes on that says old news, because this is exactly what Democrat-run cities have been like for a long time. And it's not just unemployment fraud, right? I mean, if you go down, how about election fraud? Oh, I'm sorry. Should we check in with Detroit and Philadelphia and some of the other big cities that have had problems, especially in some of the inner city areas specifically? That's a problem. So there's some fraud there. What about state health care benefits going to illegal immigrants in places like Illinois? Also rental assistance. That's why we saw so many folks in Chicago getting frustrated because, like, wait a minute, why are they getting benefits? That type of thing. So, I mean, you just go down the list. Crime, of course. So you put it all together and you see why there's, I don't want to call it a mass exodus, but there has definitely been an exodus of folks leaving big cities and moving out into the suburbs. And that's why Democrats are trying to get folks in the suburbs now, because those liberals in the suburbs, they're there now rather than as much in the big cities. And so that's why, Emily, all of the patterns have shifted demographically and geographically as well.
Yeah, absolutely. David, I think you bring up so many good points there. The exodus for sure is happening because of these awful policies. I mean, 80% of all of this fraud coming from just 3 woke states. You have to agree that there's something in common with all of that. All right, great discussion, you guys. Coming up, a new Christian animated film is turning heads at the box office. How the movie is telling the stories of the Bible through the eyes of a child, drawing family audiences across America to theaters, and has Hollywood questioning their content. American Sunrise will return in just a few minutes. Stay with us.
God bless the USA.
In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm American Sunrise correspondent Emily Finn. It's time now for our moment of faith, brought to us by Lee Greenwood and the God Bless the USA Bible. In focus today, a new pro-Jesus movie is making a splash at the box offices, raking in $7 million and opening in second place. Wow. Launching on about 3,000 screens last weekend, Angel Studios, the production company behind the new animated film, welcomed audiences to their latest work, The King of Kings. The movie tells the story of Jesus through the lens of a father at story time with his son, telling the stories of the Bible before bed. It gives a unique perspective on the life of Jesus through the eyes of a child as he walks beside him throughout the animated versions of all of the miracles. They say last weekend was the widest open for an animated biblical film in history. Here's a sneak peek at the movie.
This story is about the King of Kings.
If you're with me, then I know that I will.
It has angels and wicked kings and miracles. Oh, so you want to hear the story now? Why don't we help Jesus along the way? There's not nearly enough food here to feed all of these people.
I hope this helps.
Look, there's something out there.
Don't be afraid. This was a miracle to some, but a threat to others.
Why don't we just turn the people against him?
Open up my eyes and see, and I'm not only wishing, dreaming.
Thank you.
Can't you help it?
Yes, but not the way you think.
Daddy.
Wow, absolutely amazing. Let's welcome the head of business development and acquisitions for Angel Studios, David Fisher. David, thank you so much for joining American Sunrise. You know, we were talking during the break. This just takes Christian family entertainment to a whole nother level. The best they had when I was growing up was Veggie Tales. How pleased are you with the success of this film?
We are blown away, Emily. It's great to be with you this morning. Our opening day on Friday was 7 million. Over the weekend, we surpassed all biblical animation opening weekends with a $19 million forecast. We are just thrilled at Angel Studios.
That's absolutely incredible. Congratulations to your team. You know, breaking into the entertainment space with Christian messages can definitely be difficult. What would you say inspires you guys to persevere, keep going through the difficulties, and spread God's word in such an effective way, like what we saw with King of Kings?
We are dedicated to the audience, Emily. Like, at the end of the day, it's the audience that greenlights all the movies, all the television shows that go on the Angel app and actually go out into theaters. To get King of Kings into over 3,200 screens across the country, it took the Angel audience to do that. And we love our audience because they tell us what they're looking for. Gone are the days at Angel Studios where there's a small group of people greenlighting films in some back office. No, we really believe that the audience knows what they want. They know what they want for their families, for their children, and they're telling us in droves. And King of Kings is just the next example of a theatrical release that's for our audience, for their children, for their families.
It takes such a unique perspective, you know, telling the Bible stories from the eyes of a child. What were you guys hoping was going to be the biggest takeaway for your audiences, especially for the young children watching the film?
Well, for years, we've had Mel Gibson's The Passion, but we know that The Passion is a very graphic telling of those last hours of Christ's life.
Right.
And when the team over at MoFac, who produced this film, brought it to Angel, we thought, this is finally a story that can be told where kids of all ages can enter into the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. That story, from both a historical perspective, if someone doesn't have a religious background, or if they do have a religious background, this can be a championed film movie for kids of all ages, families, to be able to enter into that story. And we do that through the lens of a young boy with his cat. And it's a beautiful script. It's a beautiful story for people to engage in. So what do we hope? We hope that children are inspired by their faith. We hope that children are inspired by the greatest story ever told. And we think that the way that we're delivering this, the vehicle on this one through animation, can really lower the barriers so that many more people can come in and experience this incredible story.
Amazing, amazing work, and perfect timing as we are approaching just a few days away from Easter Sunday here. David Fisher, thank you so much for joining the show, and congratulations on the success of your film.
Thank you, Emily.
We'll be back with the second hour of American Sunrise in just 2 minutes. Stick around.
Introducing the limited edition God Bless the USA Bible, inspired by Lee Greenwood's hit song and the most recognized patriotic anthem in America, God Bless the USA. The God Bless the USA large print leather-bound King James Bible also contains America's founding documents, the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence, and the Pledge of Allegiance, along with a handwritten chorus to Lee Greenwood's song, God Bless the USA. With its large print and slim design, this Bible invites you to explore God's Word anywhere, anytime. The God Bless the USA Bible makes the perfect gift and cherished family heirloom keepsake to pass on to future generations. Designed for an easy reading experience in the trusted King James Version translation, this large print Bible is perfect to take to church, Bible study, work, and for traveling. Order yours today at GodBlessTheUSABible.com.
on the second hour of American Sunrise. What will Wall Street look like after an historic and volatile week? A live look at the big board ahead. Plus, talks are positive between the U.S. and Iran over Tehran's nuclear program. Will the architect of the art of the deal maker get this deal done soon? We have the latest details. Then liberal comedian Bill Maher laughs it up with President Trump at the White House. What was said between them? In moments, Maher shares the details as Hour 2 of American Sunrise starts right now.
Good morning, America.
Welcome to American Sunrise.
Whether it's culture,
we have breaking news to share with you.
Politics.
President Trump is joining us live now from Florida.
We've got you covered.
This is what it looks like to be a patriot.
We have to protect the American family.
The American dream is still alive.
I'm David Brody.
I'm Terrence.
And I'm Dr. Gina.
Welcome back, everybody, to the second hour of American Sunrise. I'm David Brody, coming to you from the deep state. That's Washington, D.C. Let's bring in Allison Hans. Of course, she's filling in for Dr. G. She's down in West Palm. T. Bates in our Denver newsroom. Good morning to both of you. Allison, we're on stock market watch. That should come as no surprise since we're less than 30 minutes away from seeing what this week will look like. And there you go, Allison. There's some numbers for you.
Well, thank you for the numbers. It looks like gold. Wow. Gold is at an all-time high right now, 3,223. That's pretty awesome. And also silver up 32. So that's something that we're watching. I don't know if you all saw the UFC fight or was it last night? Saturday night. Pretty cool. Weekend. Our own Brian Glenn was there, which was pretty awesome. And really an amazing evening.
You know, I'm glad you brought that up, Allison, because I think it's such a sad state of affairs. Shaquille O'Neal was at that fight, and he shook President Trump's hand. They exchanged some pleasantries. On my timeline, people have been upset with him for shaking the man's hand. And I can't wrap my brain around why would you be upset that the man exchanged pleasantries, with the president of the United States. Forget about what you think of the politics. It's just basic common courtesy to shake someone's hand. They said hello and went on about their way. The fact that it's an issue just still blows my mind. And maybe I'm making more of it than I should, but it just blows my mind that people would object to someone even greeting the president of the United States. I can't get over it.
That's absurd. I think if Bill Maher can go sit and have dinner with the president, I think Shaquille O'Neal can shake his hand.
Yeah. Just my 2 cents. Sorry, David. I had to get on my little. I had to get on that one because it's been bugging me really for the past couple of days. Like when I first saw it, and the fact that it was a conversation online, my blood pressure was going up, and I just wanted to jump in and be like, "You idiots!" But I decided not to, and I just read and went on about my business. Really? Anyway, let's get to some of the stories of the day, guys. The Trump administration is set to launch a national security trade investigation into imported semiconductors and microchips. The move would mostly affect technology from East Asia, like countries like China and Taiwan. It also, however, sets the stage for future tariffs on smartphones, computers, and other electronic imports. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick says new tariffs, separate from President Trump's reciprocal tariffs, will eventually be levied on those products and even more.
Semiconductors and pharmaceuticals will have a tariff model in order to encourage them to reshore, to be built in America. We need our medicines and we need semiconductors and our electronics to be built in America. We can't be beholden and rely upon foreign countries for fundamental things that we need. We can't be relying on China for fundamental things that we need. Our medicines and our semiconductors need to be built in America. Donald Trump is on it. He's calling that out.
Secretary Lutnick says details on the new tariffs are expected to be rolled out this week, with the actual tariffs being implemented in the next couple of months. The Trump administration is in a bit of a face-off this morning with the Supreme Court after the High Court ordered the administration to bring a wrongfully deported Salvadoran back to the United States. While the administration acknowledges that Kilmar Abrego Garcia was living in Maryland legally under a work permit, court filings on Sunday argue the administration isn't obligated to help him get out of prison in El Salvador and return to the U.S. While the SCOTUS order says the U.S. should, quote, facilitate Garcia's return, attorneys say that only means they should remove any domestic obstacles that would otherwise impede his ability to return to the United States. That doesn't include helping him get out of El Salvador. Immigration officials also say the order barring Garcia's deportation is no longer valid, quote, because of his membership in MS-13, which is now a designated foreign terrorist organization. Well, the man accused of torching Pennsylvania's governor mansion remains in custody this morning and could answer to attempted murder, terrorism, aggravated arson, and aggravated assault charges as soon as today. The fire forced Democrat Governor Josh Shapiro, his family, and another family to evacuate the burning home on Saturday after they'd been celebrating the Jewish holiday of Passover.
This type of violence is not okay. This kind of violence is becoming far too common in our society. And I don't give a damn if it's coming from one particular side or the other, directed at one particular party or another, or one particular person or another. It is not okay. And it has to stop.
Investigators say the suspect scaled a fence and eluded police in order to break into the governor's mansion and ultimately set the fire. So far, investigators aren't saying what motivated the attack. By the way, as you can see here in these pictures, the mansion sustained pretty significant damage as a result. That's a quick check of your headlines. Now let's get you over to David.
Okay, T. Bates, appreciate it. We'll be following that story for sure. Here's another story, guys, we're following. Of course, it's the live look at the futures on Wall Street. We just showed it to you a moment ago, but things change. It's volatile. It's actually one of the most volatile weeks ever last week. The bell rings in about 25 minutes, and here we go. So we'll just take a look. It's about the same as we showed you. It's a little bit up, actually. The Dow up about, 469 points. I'm sorry, that's a pretty good jump there. We'll see. S&P up about 87, and the NASDAQ up 377. We will check those numbers, but that is at least an early good sign. T. Bates will be here in about 20 minutes or so with more on that and the actual opening bell. You know, the president spoke about all of this aboard Air Force One last night, specifically about temporary tariff exemptions on electronics specifically. Take a look.
We'll be discussing it, but we'll also talk to companies. You know, you have to show a certain flexibility. Nobody should be so rigid. We have to have a certain flexibility. And we're doing really well, and internationally our country is going to be stronger than it's ever been.
So some products there's flexibility for some products?
Some products, yeah, maybe.
Can you say what kind?
No, I'll be announcing it in not too distant future.
All right, let's get more now. We'll go straight to the White House. Chief White House correspondent Brian Glenn with us, as always, from the North Lawn. Brian, talk to us about these exemptions. They're going to eventually get there with tariffs on electronics, but it might be a couple of months, is the understanding. Is that what you're hearing?
That's exactly what I'm hearing. And I think the overall message here is we're making those gradual steps to putting all of this in place to reshore productions of those semiconductors. When you take a look at how important these items are to our everyday life, you're talking everything from a phone to a dishwasher to just about every electronic medical devices, they rely on these. And it's very important that we make them here in this country. You know, I think back even during COVID, we saw, you know, in the pharmaceutical industry, you realize just how many pharmaceuticals, drugs that we use every day, life-saving drugs, are produced in other countries when you start to move those items back here. And the president laying out a very strategic plan to make sure that we slowly bring back the products that we need here, and that the tariffs don't necessarily make items that we need unaffordable due to what he would implement on them.
Brian, the administration also saying there's a national security component to all of this as it relates to the semiconductors, as it relates to making our own medicines. Yeah. Can you speak to that? Can you expound on that a little bit from the perspective of the administration?
Well, think about this for a second. During COVID, there was a lot of ivermectin, a lot of other drugs that, quite frankly, were made outside this country. If we were to get into another natural disaster, a pandemic, or perhaps, God forbid, another war, those much-needed drugs that we need here in this country for people suffering from whatever ailment, they need those drugs. And of course, we need the semiconductors. There's a lot of things that we need that, quite honestly, would be cut off and production would stop. Those items would no longer be made, causing a shortage on them. And of course, when that happens, the inflationary rate on those items goes skyrocketing. So it is a national security issue, not just from a health, but from a defense standpoint as well.
Oh, Brian, meanwhile, U.S. and Iran officials said Saturday's conversations in Oman were positive and constructive over Tehran's nuclear program. What are you hearing about this?
Yeah, it is. When you look about what the state of the lack of respect that they had towards the previous administration back in 2022, Biden was completely unsuccessful with any of those negotiations. Well, there's a new man in the White House, and that man knows how to negotiate. And of course, Witkoff being a great representative for the administration, talking to them. From what we heard on Saturday, those talks were very positive as President Trump spoke and said he looked forward to additional talks this week. We'll see the timing of that, but we certainly are making progress. But if everyone would just realize that if we had a previous administration that had a little bit of respect, or people respected them, we might be a little bit further ahead than we are right now. But that simply did not happen. They did not respect Joe Biden. But now it's time to reverse course.
Well, that's for sure. And speaking of not respecting Joe Biden, let's talk about Russia and Ukraine and that war, because that's the same deal. And now we're seeing this moment of a Russian missile strike. It struck the Ukrainian city of Sumy, where people gather to celebrate Palm Sunday. Officials are saying more than 30 people are dead. They're actually children that are included among the deceased. This is something that President Trump has just really, really harped on about. Stop the killing. And yet Russia does this. He's PO'd, right, at Putin. I think this is going to get him a little bit more PO'd as well.
I think so, too, David. When I read that report late last night about who was injured, what was targeted on these strikes, it made me think about how serious is Putin really on reaching some type of truce in this war and stoppage? How serious is he if he's still launching missiles into the inner cities and injuring and killing dozens of people? I think President Trump this week, I feel like there will be some serious conversations going on to stop this war. It troubles President Trump. When I was on Air Force One just last night and over the weekend, when this was brought up, anytime with the war in Ukraine, you could see the concern on his face. This is one of the things that he campaigned on. And obviously, Zelensky's been here wanting to obviously reach some type of agreement. But how serious is Putin in this? President Trump, I think, will push him this week to come up with a plan and for him to commit to ending this war.
Great points. Brian Glenn, always good to see you. Happy Monday to you. Appreciate you as always.
Thanks, Brian.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, there's your ride, by the way. Grab it on the way out. All right, coming up, Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer reportedly tried to hide herself in a recent Oval Office visit. It's an act some describe as Trump derangement syndrome. That's hilarious. The details next. Also, after last week's wild ride, what is Wall Street going to look like on this Monday morning? Will it be mayhem? Will it be money? Well, it's going to be money, but how much? We're going to go live to the trading floor for the opening bell. American Sunrise, back in a moment. Welcome back, everybody, to American Sunrise. I'm David Brody. Great to have you with us this morning. By the way, thanks for joining us in the chat, Getter and Rumble. I'll get in there in just a moment. I'm coming soon. Don't worry. Not that you're worrying about it. Time now to drain the swamp. This morning, we are fleshing out Michigan Governor Gretchen Whitmer. That is a great photo. Governor Whitmer criticized after she was seen hiding her face behind blue binders while standing in the Oval Office last week when President Trump was speaking. Definitely not red binders, total blue. Whitmer was in D.C. to talk about tariffs and federal help she's requested due to a recent ice storm. Let's bring in Terrence and Allison to discuss all of this. Well, at least she wasn't giving communion there in the Oval Office, but that's a separate issue. Guys, let's play a quick little... Yeah, I went there, sorry. Let's play a quick little soundbite of President Trump actually giving Whitmer a quick bit of praise. Take a look.
We're honored to have Gretchen Whitmer from Michigan, great state of Michigan. And she's really done an excellent job and a very good person.
Well, T. Bates, an excellent job. Okay, I don't know about that, but yeah, and a good person. But this is what Trump does. I mean, this is part of the art of the deal, right? He probably wants something, obviously, at some point from her in terms of Michigan and some of the things that they're doing there. So, I mean, this is all strategy. Plus, Whitmer, speaking about strategy, T. Bates, I mean, Whitmer specifically is trying to kind of thread the needle here because she's going to run for president in 2028.
Right. That's my thought. That she's trying to set herself up to run for president. Hiding your face, so probably not the best way to do it. You just stand up, you take the criticism, and go for it. But I think also another thing, Allison, this speaks to is that President Trump is a diplomat, that even in tense situations, he's able to be diplomatic when he chooses to be in order to, if you will, just make nice with whomever he's dealing with. And I think he's shown that here when it comes to Gretchen Whitmer.
Well, I thought this was absolutely hilarious. I don't know why I thought it was so funny, but I mean, yes, the Doritos thing during the campaign, she didn't hide her head in shame for that, but she's hiding in the Oval Office. And I think it's so funny with the president sitting there, and yes, he's being very diplomatic, but we all know the tension that's there. So that was great.
She wasn't hiding her face. Gretchen Whitmer was sneaking a Dorito. That's what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
Sneaking a Dorito.
Yeah. Doritos. News. Yeah, Doritos and communion. The internet is forever. Sorry, Gretchen Whitmer. All right. Thanks, guys. So tariffs have thrown the global economy into chaos. Potential widespread inflation tied to mass supply chain disruptions is weighing heavily on all of us. But there is a silver lining that most people miss. President Trump specifically exempted gold and silver bullion from these sweeping tariffs. While these new policies are triggering significant financial chaos, the administration preserved your ability to diversify into precious metals. So if you're concerned about your savings, look, here's a suggestion. I encourage you to have a free consultation with a Birch Gold Precious Metals specialist. The first step is what you do is you text America to 989898 and receive your free, no obligation info kit on gold. Learn how to hold gold and silver in a tax sheltered account. Birch Gold's never going to help you will help you convert an existing IRA or 401k into a gold IRA for no money out of pocket. They've got an A+ rating with the Better Business Bureau, thousands of thankful and satisfied customers. So text America to the number, there it is on the screen, 989898. Once again, text America to 989898 to claim your free, I love free info kit right now. Back in a moment, everybody. See you in a moment.
morning to you. Looking good on this Monday morning. Welcome back, everyone. We appreciate you being here with us. We're getting you ready for the opening bell of the New York Stock Exchange. It's going to ring here in about 5 minutes. So far, so good for the major indices. As you can see, the Dow, S&P 500, and NASDAQ are all up right now in pre-market trading. Again, the bell is going to ring here in about 5 minutes, and hopefully it will continue this way. Those of you who are investing, hopefully it will be a profitable day of investing. Gold and silver, those two precious metals that had been pretty steady all week, not looking so good at the moment. But again, we'll let you know how things ultimately turn out once the opening bell rings. Now, though, let's get you over to Allison. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Terrence. Well, if you're trying to live healthier, small changes matter. Small starts can make you feel and notice the difference. So what's one thing anyone can start today to improve their health? Well, here to help us naturally boost our health is Shemaine Nugent, host of Faith and Freedom right here on RAV. Good morning, Shemaine.
Good morning, Allison. So good to see you.
So good to see you. I want to mention that Shemaine is also the author of Abundantly Well. This is a Bible-based wisdom for weight loss, increased energy, and vibrant health. Welcome. Thank you so much for coming in this morning.
Absolutely. You know, I wanted to tell you that there are so many ways that you can improve your health. And now, since scientists decided to bring back the dire wolves from the Ice Age, I think it's really important that we put our health at the number one thing, because I don't know when we're going to have to run from dire wolves or pterodactyls. But one thing, Allison, that I know is that I take Field of Greens. I put 1 scoop in my water every day, and it helps me keep up my strength just in case we have to run from those dire wolves.
Okay, you're talking about dire wolves. I had Brody earlier talking about wrestling alligators. What are some other life-changing tips that you can do to pick up your wellness journey?
Well, it's the most important thing to start small. I mean, we can all talk about overhauling our diet and exercising at the gym every day, but it's easier to stick with it when you start small and take baby steps. That's why I suggest just one simple change. Swap out 1 sugary drink or soda for a Field of Greens each day. It's just a little tweak, and you'll start feeling better and noticing the difference.
So Field of Greens, you take 1 scoop in the morning and you put it into water?
You can put it into water or coffee or whatever it is that you want. Whatever you feel comfortable with, juice. But Ted and I have noticed such a great difference in our energy, especially during the winter when, you know, we don't have access to fruits and vegetables, and we can't always eat healthy, especially when we're traveling. But what I love about Field of Greens is that doctors developed carefully selecting every fruit and vegetable specifically for heart health and liver and kidneys and lungs and metabolism and even healthy weight. And every ingredient, Allison, serves a purpose, and that's why it works.
And how do you know if it's working?
Well, I know when I don't take it, put it that way. I don't feel good. I feel bloated. I don't sleep good. And most people notice a huge energy boost first, and then we hear about feeling better, gut health, and overall health improved. And here's the greatest thing, I think, because you can take this to the doctor. And if the doctor at your next checkup visit, if he says, wow, what are you doing? I want some of that. If he doesn't notice a difference in your health, you get your money back. I mean, who does that?
That is very cool. Well, you look fabulous, so we should all just follow what you're doing. Shemaine Nugent, thank you so much for being here this morning.
Thanks, Allison. Good to see you. God bless.
God bless. Well, if you'd like to make some simple, healthy changes, and Field of Greens sounds like a smart way to do it, then let me get you started with a 20% discount when you use the promo code RAV at fieldofgreens.com. That's promo code RAV at fieldofgreens.com. Time now to toss it over to Terrence in Denver for the opening bell at the New York Stock Exchange, sponsored by AMAC. Terrence.
The Association of Mature American Citizens is the conservative voice for Americans 50 and older. AMAC is fighting for the values that you hold dear. Join today. Together, we can write the course of America.
The applause is underway at the New York Stock Exchange, which means the bell is going to ring here in less than a minute. And then we'll get an idea of how the markets are faring to start this work week and this week of trading here in the United States. Of course, tariffs still the big deal and still impacting the markets as we speak. So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. The bell is ringing, which means the markets are now officially open. And just like that, similar to pre-market trading, all three major indices, the Dow, S&P 500, and the NASDAQ are all in the green. As you can see, the Dow is up over 540 points. The S&P 500 and the NASDAQ also up fairly significantly. Hopefully that is going to last. Now, what is interesting, gold and silver are both down right now. Both of those precious metals had been pretty consistent even when the markets themselves were down earlier. Well, I guess it would be last week now. They had been good hedges against some of the volatility in the markets. And at the moment, both of those precious metals are down. We'll see if they're able to rebound. Still to come here on American Sunrise, though, the dinner between the president and comedian Bill Maher. Two men who couldn't be more different, or are they? What was discussed during their meeting? Find out. You'll have to stick around for that. Plus, an electric entrance into a star-packed arena for President Trump. We'll discuss the president's rock star status among so many Americans. That and so much more when American Sunrise continues.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm American Sunrise correspondent Emily Finn. Thanks for joining us this morning. We invite you to join the conversation on Getter and Rumble. Time now to take the political pulse of America. And the beat today, the dinner details between President Donald Trump and liberal comedian Bill Maher. Maher met with Trump in Washington a few weeks ago to spotlight the need for peaceful communication rather than hurling insults from 3,000 miles away. Take a look at this.
Okay, so meet up in person. Maybe it'll be different. Spoiler alert, it was. First good sign, before I left for the Capitol, I had my staff collect and print out this list of almost 60 different insulting epithets that the president has said about me. Things like stupid, dummy, lowlife dummy, sleazebag, sick, sad, stone cold crazy. Really a dumb guy, fired like a dog, his show is dead. 60. I brought this to the White House because I wanted him to sign it, which he did.
bring in Allison, David, and Terrence to talk about this meeting further. I mean, Terrence, that's pretty funny. I mean, if they're going to have some peaceful conversations, it's good to inject a little humor there. The start to Maher's report revealed what Maher described as the president's gracious and measured side. That was great to see, Terrence.
No, absolutely. And let's be honest here. Both sides have been very critical of the other. Bill Maher has been very critical of President Trump and probably said some things that, had he said them on the street, would have ended in fisticuffs. So the fact that they were both able to sit down, drop all of that, and have that moment of levity, if you will, with signing the insult list, I think speaks well. And the bigger picture here, I think, is that they were able to have a casual conversation and one that was respectful and able to, you know, obviously they're still not going to agree on everything, but they were able to have a respectful conversation and see the other's viewpoint. And I think that really speaks to President Trump being presidential by allowing someone who has a differing opinion to come into the White House, to feed them and to listen. I think that's critical. Being a leader isn't always acting. Sometimes being a leader means that you listen and then you act based on all of the information you have. And now he's got more information.
Absolutely. I think Go ahead, David.
Go ahead, Ellen. No, Emily, please.
I was just going to say, I think it's a great example to see from a sitting president, something that we never saw the past 4 years from Joe Biden.
Yeah, there's no doubt. I like how he's old school with the signature of the list. You know, so I've known him since 2011. I've gotten about 20, 25 or so emails, some actually actual, how do I say this, letters in the mail, where he'll literally print out something that I said that was positive about him, and he'll sign it, and it comes to me like FedEx through one of his secretaries. It's the funniest thing, for sure. But you know, this is what he does. You know, he understands when people are critical of him. He can kind of deal with that kind of overall. Like, for example, I remember one time I was on, dare I say, MSNBC back in the day. That was a long time ago, back in 2016. I was on Morning Joe, and I was talking about Marco Rubio, and the phone rings, my cell phone rings, and it's Trump. And he says, "You weren't being very nice to me." That's how he starts out the conversation. And I say, "What do you mean I wasn't being very nice to you? I was talking about Marco Rubio. I wasn't talking about you." He goes, "I know, you were saying nice things about Marco Rubio." He goes, "That's bad for Trump," is what he said. You know, and so, because of course Rubio was running at the same time for president back in 2016. So this is the type of stuff he does, which is kind of funny.
Yeah, well, he certainly has a pulse on everything happening in the media, David. If it's positive or negative, he's still going to sign it either way. So there were a few moments that were a little bit surprising for Maher during that amazing tour. That was a quote from him. He said the tour was amazing of the White House. He said he found out Trump is much more self-aware than he lets on in public. Take a look at this.
At one point, we were walking through it is an amazing tour of the whole house. And I don't remember exactly what we were talking about, but it must have been something with the 2020 election, because I know he used the word lost. And I distinctly remember saying, "Wow, I never thought I'd hear you say that." He didn't get mad. He's much more self-aware than he lets on in public. Look, I get it. It doesn't matter who he is at a private dinner with a comedian. It matters who he is on the world stage. I'm just taking as a positive that this person exists, because everything I've ever not liked about him was, I swear to God, absent, at least on this night with this guy.
Allison, your reaction to that?
I think that's amazing. I love that photo there. And I think that Bill Maher is really, I don't know, he's bringing us into the room of what happened. He's just not saying, "Oh, this was a great dinner." I think that Trump is so self-aware, and he brings that to everyone that he meets. What I'm thinking, I'm sitting here, I'm thinking, okay, after calling Bill Maher a sleazebag and a low-life dummy, and then Bill Maher printing it out and having Trump sign it, what I'm wondering is, could we see a day that Rosie O'Donnell ends up dining at the White House? Is that a possibility?
Oh, that's pretty funny, Allison. I mean, I don't know. There's a long list of people if we're going there.
You know, Bill Maher talks about taking us in the room. And if I could just quickly tell another story, and I talk about this in this book I wrote called The Faith of Donald Trump. I had a dinner with him. My wife and I actually had dinner with Donald Trump. He wasn't president at the time. He was running in 2016, and Melania was there. And the four of us were at this table, and he leans into me, and literally this is the first question he asked me. He says, "How is your marriage?" It was the first question he asked me. And it really shocked me. I thought he was going to talk about politics or the evangelicals because they love him and all of that. But he said, "How's your marriage?" I said, "Well, it's fine." Why'd you ask that? He goes, "Well, I just want to let you know, I want to make sure you take care of your marriage because I'm a workaholic, and it didn't quite work out for me very well early on, and I just want to make sure that you're doing what you need to do to make sure your marriage is protected." It just kind of blew me away that he would ask that question out of all the questions he could have asked, or at least conversation points. Anyhow, something to think about.
No, David, I think that's an extraordinary question, and I think that he is well aware that he is the most powerful man on the planet, yet he is a human being. And we all have to remember that.
Guys, if I could just interject, because I think this, Bill Maher said the quiet part out loud, and I think we've maybe glossed over it a little bit. The issues that many Americans have, those who do have an issue with President Trump, aren't necessarily policy issues. It's about the personality. And Bill Maher basically said it. He took issue with his personality. He said, "I didn't like the guy," basically. Maybe I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but he basically said, "I didn't like the guy." It wasn't, "I didn't like his policies." It wasn't, "I didn't like his politics." I didn't like the guy. And so I think that really speaks a lot to how many Americans feel. It's a personality issue. It's not necessarily a policy or politics issue.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good point, Terrence, because, when you think about it with the Republicans, obviously they agree with the policies and they kind of, I don't want to say look the other way, but it doesn't really, you recognize that sometimes it's a performance. Sometimes he is putting on a persona because Bill Maher coming out and saying that behind the scenes, Trump is actually a really nice, down to earth, self-aware kind of guy. People have been writing about this for years. We heard about this all throughout his first administration and even during the time when Joe Biden was in office and he was campaigning as well. So it's interesting. Like you said, policies definitely are resonating. Now, another part of that 2.5-hour meeting, Maher says that Trump was genuine with him, asking him about what's happening with Iran and Tehran's fast-scaling nuclear program. Pretty important topic to discuss there. Take a listen to this.
There were so many moments when I hit him with a joke or contradicted something, and no problem. At dinner, he was asking me about the nuclear situation in Iran in a very genuine, "Hey, I think you're a smart guy. I want your opinion," sort of way. And I said, "Well, obviously you're privy to things about it. I'm not. But for what it's worth, I thought the Obama deal was worth letting play out because we made Iran destroy 98% of the uranium and they were 15 years away from a bomb." And then I said to him, "But we got rid of that. You got rid of that." He didn't get mad or call me a left-wing lunatic. He took it in. I told him I thought parts of his plan for Gaza were wacky, but that I had supported him in the idea that Gaza could be Dubai instead of hell.
Terrence, Maher says he never felt like he was walking on eggshells when speaking with the president. Those are some pretty, I don't want to say that he was insulting him, but he was definitely challenging him in the way that he handles foreign policy.
But wasn't that the point of the whole conversation?
Of course, yes.
Is that they could have an open and honest conversation about the issues. And again, I think that speaks to leadership. A good leader listens. It doesn't mean that just because someone says it, you take what they say as gospel, but you listen, you weigh the facts, you weigh the perspectives that way. When you do finally make a decision as a leader, you make it with a number of different perspectives in mind, with a holistic view of whatever the issue is. I just see that as smart leadership. That's just the way I see it, David.
Yeah, no, I was about to say the same thing. If you notice, he's always saying, "So what do you think? What do you think? What do you think?" I mean, he just wants every opinion in the room. Then he's his own man. We know that. And he'll come to his own conclusion for sure.
Yeah, and let's keep in mind here as well, I mean, so many former Democrats have come in to help with the administration. RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard, Elon Musk.
Right.
I mean, it's he definitely likes to hear from all different opinions. Now, finally, you guys, we got to wrap up here, but this is Maher's conclusion in his monologue talking about his time at the White House. You got to see this.
And he said, I've heard from a lot of people who really like that we're having this dinner. Not all, but a lot. And I said, same. A lot of people told me they loved it, but not all. And we agreed. The people who don't even want us to talk, we don't like you. Don't talk, as opposed to what? writing the same editorial for the millionth time and making 25-hour speeches into the wind? Really, that's what liberals have? He takes the piss out of everybody else and we can hold ours? Okay, that's my report. You can hate me for it, but I'm not a liar. Trump was gracious and measured, and why he isn't that in other settings, I don't know, and I can't answer, and it's not my place to answer. I'm just telling you what I saw, and I wasn't high.
And thank you, Bill Maher, for the addendum that he wasn't high. What I loved about this is two people from opposite sides of the spectrum coming together and talking. And what I love most about Donald Trump is that he does go out there and ask the opinions of everyone. We, the American people, from the top guy to the little guy. He wants to know what you think. And that's such a departure from the past where only the credentialed class had a say on what's going on in this country. We are sick of it. We all have something to say. And that's what I think ultimately this evening was about.
Yeah, great point,
well
Allison.
Said. Well said.
Very good point. You know, it really is a great example to see from a sitting president. Hopefully this trickles down into conversations between everyday Americans, everyday Democrats and Republicans. All right, you guys, straight ahead on American Sunrise, Friday night's UFC main event this weekend may have been past old Joe Biden's bedtime, but the epic entrance of President Donald Trump is something that Joe Biden never experienced. We've got the details. You don't want to miss this. Also, mothers and their sons. Coming up, a heartwarming announcement from Vice President Vance about his mom and why he is so proud of her. We're back with more American Sunrise right after this. Don't go anywhere.
Let's spill some tea.
Let's Spill Some Tea is sponsored by Artillery Tea Company. ArtilleryTCO.com is the website. Use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off of your first order. Artillery Tea is all natural. It's whole leaf. The tea bags are chemical free, and each tea bag can be used twice. Artillery Tea Company is family and veteran owned and operated, and a portion of your purchase goes to help veteran and first responder charities. Again, the website is artillerytco.com. Use the promo code America's Tea for 25% off of your first order. All right, let's get right into what's in the cup today. President Trump yet again sent crowds on fire at this weekend's UFC 314 in Miami. The president walked into a packed arena ahead of the event with his grandchildren, UFC CEO Dana White, and Congressman Byron Donalds. Kid Rock performed one of his iconic songs as the president entered the venue. Elon Musk and Little X, as well as Director of National Intelligence Tulsi Gabbard, FBI Director Kash Patel, Texas Republican Senator Ted Cruz, and Barstool Sports CEO Dave Portnoy were all seen with the president throughout the night. He had quite the entourage. Check out the walkout, though.
Making the entrance right now to a standing ovation, the 47th president of the United States of America, flanked by UFC CEO Dana White and others, Donald J. Trump.
Is there anybody else that has a walk-in other than a fighter? I mean, he has some music. Kid Rock starts playing.
He had one at the NCAA tournament too. He always gets a walkout. It's like a prerequisite for him coming. Give him the walkout. People love it.
They do.
Well, and what he runs is mixed martial arts, right? I mean, he talks about watching these fight nights when he is not in the building. And President Trump making his way to the octagon yet again for a massive UFC pay-per-view event.
Got to talk to him about the fights. He really loves fights.
Oh, he loves it. Prelim fights. Think about this.
That is pretty cool. And going in and shaking hands with folks in the crowd, you even saw him there at the very end, take a moment with a fan and kind of chit-chat with him just for a second. That's not something that I think we've seen from traditional presidents. Yeah, they maybe go to a football game, the Super Bowl, or, college championship. But to go to a boxing match, to go to a UFC fight, you very rarely see that. And Emily, no matter where President Trump happens to go, he gets a standing ovation, as we just saw. Is this truly a sign of his presidency being received well by the American people? It seems to me it might be.
Certainly. Well, he's certainly being well received by UFC fans, Terrence. I mean, that was pretty cool to see his walk out there. And I will say how special that he had his two grandkids. I see Kai there over his right shoulder. Out of all people, he had this incredible entourage, very high profile names that you read off there, Terrence. And he wanted to pick his family to be the closest to him as he was making that walkout. Just a really cool thing to see there, Allison.
Oh, yeah. I don't even know Kai Trump, but I am so excited to see what type of adult she turns into, because she is so bad walking out there. And then you see her on the golf course. She is just one tough woman, young woman. And I'm just, I can't wait to see what the future holds for her, because I love that confidence. I don't know if the confidence is coming from grandpa, coming from inside, coming from dad, whatever it is, but I am all here for it.
It's a great trait. It's a Trump trait in the family, that self-confidence for sure. But Kai's a great golfer. I mean, just amazing. So, so that's exciting to see. That UFC crowd, let's be honest, they don't give a rip about the Republican Party. They don't give a rip about the Democrat Party. They don't give a rip about politics. What they care about is common sense. And that is why Donald Trump gets the standing ovation. That's it right there. That's the swing state in pictures right there. That's it. Emily and Terrence and Allison and whoever else is in this quad box.
Before we leave this segment, what is your walkout song? First song that comes to mind. What's your walkout song?
Shipping Up to Boston, Dropkick Murphys. I'm an Irish girl, so I love that tune. It's McGregor's song most of the time when he walks out at events.
I would have to adopt what Emily has, because otherwise I'd be like dancing out to show tunes, and that's unacceptable at a UFC fight. And I do have to say, I'm not a sports person, but I really do want to go to one of these things. So if the White House, if you're listening, I'm here for it.
Probably not the best idea to go out to the soundtrack of Legally Blonde. I agree with you.
Oklahoma?
Broadway. Or Oklahoma. Yeah, anything goes, and you're tap dancing out there. But I will say mine, Bohemian Rhapsody. Don't play around. Just let it go for 8 minutes, and let my ego soak it all in. Let my ego soak it all in.
I love that.
I'm not going to lie. If I'm going into the ring, if I'm going to fight someone, it's going to be Ave Maria because I'm going to be praying the whole time. Whole time. Still to come here on American Sunrise, his best-selling book on his mother's struggles with addiction launched him into the national spotlight before becoming vice president of the United States. How VP J.D. Vance is celebrating his mom's decade-long sobriety milestone at the White House. That's coming up.
Welcome back to American Sunrise. I'm Allison Hans, filling in for Dr. Gina. Thank you so much for joining us today. Time now for the sunny side up, and in the pan today, a beautiful moment for Vice President J.D. Vance and his mother as they honor his mom's milestone, her 10th year of sobriety. Vance held a celebration at the White House for his mother, posting on X saying he is grateful to be with his family for such an important moment. He says now that his mother has overcome the throes of addiction, she has become someone that he can rely on. As we all know, his best-selling book, Hillbilly Elegy, detailed his mom's struggles and her volatile behavior when she was in and out of rehab. Now, the vice president promised he would bring his mother to the White House if President Trump was okay with it to honor her decade-long sobriety achievement. The president approved. Take a look at that beautiful day for the Vance family.
Here, of course, to celebrate Mom's 10-year medallion. I know you're an inspiration to so many. A lot of people in the recovery and addiction community have taken inspiration from your story, and they should. So from the bottom of my heart and speaking for the whole family, we love you. We're proud of you.
I don't know that you know this, but there's thousands of people that look up to you. And I'm one of them. Your kindness changed my life.
The one thing is that she's doing this for is her family. I love it. And I love it.
We do recover.
Yes, we do. I told JD we didn't have to do this, but he insisted. Like Leslie said, you know, I love my family more than anything. Or this drug addict, that's what changed. That's what saved my life. I love you all. Thank you so much for being here. Let's celebrate.
Yeah.
And an absolute congratulations to that fabulous woman who obviously changed J.D. Vance's life, but also tangentially
Changed
the course
her
of
whole life.
history and all of our lives. So thank you so much.
It's not how you start. It's not how you start. It's how you finish.
You
Beautiful
got it.
stuff.
Well, we had a great show today. Thank you so much for joining us. We have so much more for you every morning. It starts at 8 a.m. We will see you then. War Room is up next. Go boldly now.
The world cheats us. They've been cheating us for decades. They cheat us with tariffs, higher tariffs, but more importantly, they cheat us with the so-called non-tariff barriers. It's the VAT taxes, the dumping, the currency manipulation, the technical barriers that keep our autos out of Japan, the agricultural barriers that keep our pork out of Australia.